Imagine walking through a crowded city street, cars honking, screens flashing, people rushing with coffee in one hand and phones in the other. And yet, in the midst of all this noise, what do you see if you look closely? Faces that seem present, but eyes that are empty. Smiles that flicker for a second, but vanish the moment the camera is gone. How strange it is that in an age of constant connection, so many live with a quiet ache of disconnection. Have you felt it? That unspoken question in the middle of the night. Why, even though I have so much, does my heart feel hollow? Perhaps you have scrolled endlessly, trying to fill the silence. Perhaps you have achieved success, gained recognition, but still the mind whispers, something is missing. Buddhism teaches us that suffering is not a punishment. It is a teacher. What we call depression, anxiety, or loneliness is not the sign of a broken mind. It is the signal of a life out of balance. Like a bell ringing in a temple, pain calls us back to awareness. And yet, instead of listening, most of us try to drown it out. We run, we consume, we hide behind busyness. But the bell keeps ringing. Let us pause. Let us breathe. The Buddha pointed to the reality of dukkha, the suffering woven into life, not as a curse, but as a path. To recognize suffering is the first noble truth. To understand its causes is the second. To realize that liberation is possible is the third. And to walk the path of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom is the fourth. In this modern age, we have been trained to see pain as an error, like a glitch in a computer program. But what if pain is not an error? What if it is a message? When the body aches, it signals imbalance. When the heart aches, it too is signaling, look here, pay attention, something must change. Loneliness, in particular, is one of the great epidemics of our time. We can live in apartments stacked on top of one another, attend meetings with hundreds of colleagues, post to thousands of followers, and still, when the evening comes, feel utterly unseen. Why? Because loneliness is not the absence of people, it is the absence of belonging. It is the illusion of separation, the forgetting of interbeing. Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "We are here to awaken from the illusion of our separateness." Loneliness whispers the opposite lie. You are cut off. You are alone. But Buddhism reveals you are not separate. You are a continuation of countless causes and conditions, the rain, the soil, your ancestors, your community. To believe you are isolated is to forget your true nature. Depression, too, is not simply a personal weakness. It is not just chemistry, though biology plays a role. It is also a mirror of the way we live. When life is driven by comparison, when values are reduced to money, status, or external praise, we lose touch with our deeper needs, meaning, connection, purpose. The mind then cries out, and that cry is what we often label as depression. But let us not mistake the cry for weakness. In Buddhism, the lotus blooms only in the mud. Without the mud, there is no lotus. Without suffering, there is no awakening. Every tear, every restless night, every moment of despair can become the soil in which compassion and wisdom grow. If you know how to sit with the mud, you will one day see the lotus. This is why we must approach suffering not with fear, but with reverence. When anxiety arises, instead of saying, "Go away," we can breathe and say, "I see you." When loneliness arises, instead of rushing to fill it with noise, we can ask, "What truth are you showing me?" Each emotion becomes a Dharma teacher, if only we have the courage to listen. The world today tells us to be independent, to stand alone, to fix ourselves. But Buddhism whispers a gentler truth. No one walks alone. Healing requires community, compassion, and interdependence. Just as a flame cannot burn without oxygen, we cannot heal without the air of connection. And so, as we begin this journey together, let us shift the way we see our pain, not as an enemy to be crushed, but as a guide to be understood, not as a brokenness, but as a signal. Suffering is not the end of the path, it is the door. The question is, will we step through it? Take a breath. Feel it fully. Whatever loneliness, anxiety, or grief you carry, it is not here to destroy you. It is here to awaken you. When most of us hear the word suffering, the mind reacts instantly with resistance. We flinch, we ask, "Why me?" or we rush to find someone to blame. Deep within, many secretly believe suffering is a punishment karma, striking us for past mistakes, life singling us out with cruelty. But Buddhism invites us to see with fresh eyes. Suffering is not punishment, it is a teacher. Think about the role of a true teacher. A teacher does not flatter us, nor give us only what is pleasant. A teacher challenges us, stretches us beyond comfort, places before us questions we would rather avoid. In the same way, suffering pushes us to confront truths we would rather ignore. It strips away illusions, demands honesty, and forces us to see what our comfortable habits conceal. Consider the Buddha himself. Before his awakening, Siddhartha Gautama lived in luxury, shielded from sickness, aging, and death. His father thought by hiding suffering he could preserve his son's happiness. But the opposite occurred. Siddhartha's sheltered life left him restless and unfulfilled. It was only when he left the palace and faced the realities of sickness, old age, and death that his true path began. Without suffering, there would have been no Buddha. Without the mud, no lotus blooms. This is the paradox. What we avoid is what we need. The very thing we call misfortune may be the turning point of transformation. A heartbreak teaches us the fragility of clinging. A failure humbles our arrogance. An illness awakens gratitude for the body we once ignored. A period of loneliness pushes us to discover the deeper meaning of connection. Each moment of pain carries the seed of wisdom if we dare to open it. But how do we open to suffering without drowning in it? Buddhism gives us two keys: mindfulness and compassion. Mindfulness allows us to sit with suffering, neither denying nor exaggerating it. When sadness comes, the untrained mind says, "I must not feel this," and pushes it away. But mindfulness whispers, "Let me breathe with this sadness. Let me see it clearly." By naming it, breathing in, "I know this is sadness." Breathing out, "I hold this sadness with care." We create a space where the pain can teach us instead of consume us. Compassion is the second key. So often when we suffer, we add a second arrow to the first. The first arrow is the pain itself, the breakup, the illness, the loss. The second arrow is the story we tell. This means I am worthless. This means I will never heal. Compassion removes the second arrow. It says, "Yes, I am hurting. And yes, I deserve kindness even now." Compassion turns suffering into soil for growth rather than poison. Modern psychology echoes this. Studies show that people who approach their pain with self-compassion recover faster from depression and trauma than those who criticize themselves. The Buddha's insight lives on in science. How we hold our pain matters as much as the pain itself. Yet in today's culture, we are taught the opposite. We are told suffering is a flaw to fix, a shame to hide, or a sign of weakness. Advertisements promise a life free of discomfort if we just buy the right product. Social media teaches us to display only our smiles, never our tears. But Buddhism is not afraid of tears. In fact, tears are sacred. They water the seeds of awakening. There is an old Zen saying, "No mud, no lotus. Without hardship, our hearts remain shallow. Without mistakes, humility cannot grow. Without grief, compassion cannot deepen." Every great spiritual tradition, every story of awakening, begins with a confrontation with suffering. Moses wandering in the desert, Jesus facing temptation, the Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree, all entered darkness before they touched the light. So let us ask, what if suffering is not against us, but for us? What if the weight on your chest is not life trying to crush you, but life trying to awaken you? This shift in perception is radical. Instead of asking, "Why me?" we begin to ask, "What is this moment teaching me?" Perhaps your loneliness is teaching you the illusion of separation. Perhaps your anxiety is teaching you the need for grounding. Perhaps your grief is teaching you the depth of love. Every pain hides a lesson, and the lesson repeats until we learn it. This is why the Buddha placed suffering at the very beginning of the Four Noble Truths. Not because he was pessimistic, but because he was realistic. To deny suffering is to live asleep. To face suffering is to begin the path. Awakening does not begin in paradise. It begins in the mud of life. Do not misunderstand. This is not an invitation to seek suffering or glorify pain. The Buddha did not teach us to run toward suffering blindly. He taught us to meet it when it comes, because it will come. No life is free of loss, illness, or change. The question is not if suffering comes, but how we will respond when it does. So the next time suffering visits, pause. Instead of tightening your fists, open your hands. Instead of saying, "This should not be here," try, "This is my teacher." Listen, what is it asking of you? To slow down, to let go, to forgive, to love more deeply. Suffering as teacher is not an abstract philosophy. It is a daily practice. When you stub your toe, it teaches mindfulness of the body. When you argue with a loved one, it teaches humility and patience. When you fail at work, it teaches resilience. Even the smallest pains can whisper wisdom if we pay attention. And so we return to the core insight. Suffering is not punishment. It is not life rejecting you. It is life inviting you to awaken. The lotus waits within the mud. Will you allow it to bloom? One of the most liberating teachings of the Buddha is that everything is impermanent. Anicca, the law of impermanence, applies to all things: bodies, relationships, seasons, even mountains. And most of all, it applies to emotions. Think of the last time you felt sadness so heavy that you believed it would never end. Perhaps you thought, "This feeling will crush me forever. I will never escape it." But is that what happened? Did it stay? Or did it, in time, shift, soften, or dissolve? Emotions are like weather. The sky may be filled with dark clouds, thunder may shake the earth, rain may pour, but has there ever been a storm that lasted forever? Inevitably, the wind changes, the clouds part, and sunlight returns. In the same way, sadness, anger, fear, and anxiety pass through the mind. They are visitors, not permanent residents. The problem is not that emotions arise. The problem is that we mistake them for our essence. When fear comes, we say, "I am afraid." When sadness comes, we say, "I am broken." But Buddhism teaches us a subtle difference. You are not the sadness. You are the awareness that sees sadness. You are not the fear. You are the vast sky in which fear appears, dances for a while, and fades. Thich Nhat Hanh often used the image of the sky. He said, "The blue sky is always there, even when covered by clouds." Likewise, your true nature, clear, Luminous awareness is always there, even when covered by passing emotions. To remember this is to find freedom. Imagine a child crying. The tears are real, the pain is real. But do you tell the child, you will cry forever? No, you hold them, you wait, you know the storm will pass. We must learn to treat ourselves the same way. When sadness arises, hold it like a child. Whisper gently, I know you are here. I will take care of you. You will not stay forever. Modern science confirms this. Neuroscientists have found that when emotions are fully felt without resistance, most last only about 90 seconds before naturally shifting. It is our clinging, the replaying of stories, the fueling of anger with thoughts that makes emotions seem endless. Without fuel, the fire dies down. Without resistance, the cloud drifts on. But here lies the challenge. When we are in the middle of an emotion, it feels eternal. Depression whispers, you will never feel joy again. Anxiety hisses, this fear will always control you. These are lies told by the storm itself. The storm cannot imagine the sun, but the sun still exists. This is why mindfulness is essential. Mindfulness teaches us to watch emotions arise, peak, and pass. We breathe and say, breathing in, I know anger has arisen. Breathing out, I smile to my anger. We watch the wave rise, and we trust that it will also fall. Over time, this practice trains us to stop identifying with every cloud and instead rest as the sky. Think of water. When stirred, it becomes muddy, but if left still, it clears. The same is true of the mind. If we constantly stir our emotions with stories, judgments, and resistance, the water stays murky. If we breathe and allow stillness, the mud settles, clarity returns. This is not passivity, it is wisdom. To recognize impermanence is not to deny emotions, but to see them clearly. Sadness deserves compassion. Fear deserves patience. Anger deserves understanding. But none of them define you. They come and they go. The awareness that sees them is far deeper and more stable. In Buddhism, this awareness is sometimes called the original face, the nature that was never born and never dies. Clouds cannot stain the sky, storms cannot break the sky. Likewise, no emotion can damage your true essence. So the next time fear visits, imagine it as a passing guest. Offer it a chair, a cup of tea, and watch. It may sit for a while, it may even raise its voice, but sooner or later it will leave. And when it does, you will see the clear sky again. Let us return to the lotus. Just as the lotus rises above muddy water, so too can the heart rise above emotions. The mud does not disappear, but it no longer defines the flower. The lotus blooms in its presence. Likewise, sadness and fear may arise, but they do not define you. They are conditions, not essence. This truth frees us from despair, because if emotions are impermanent, then no darkness is final. If fear is impermanent, then courage is always possible. If sadness is impermanent, then joy is always within reach. To remember impermanence is to remember hope. In the modern world, depression is often described as if it were a mechanical fault, like a wire that has come loose in the brain, or a chemical imbalance that must be corrected. And while biology plays a part, Buddhism and deep human experience remind us, depression is not merely a malfunction, it is a signal. It is life's way of saying, something is out of balance, pay attention. Think of a warning light on the dashboard of a car. When the light flashes, do we smash the bulb to stop its glow? No. We look under the hood. We ask, what is the engine trying to tell me? Depression is like that warning light. Its heaviness, its exhaustion, its loss of joy, all are signals that the way we are living is not aligned with our true needs. Buddhist philosophy calls this dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness of life, when it is out of harmony with reality. When we cling to things that cannot last, when we chase values that do not nourish, suffering arises. Depression is dukkha, speaking loudly, demanding that we stop, listen, and change. What kinds of imbalance give rise to this signal? Sometimes it is disconnection. Human beings evolved to live in tribes, to share meals, to sing around fires. Yet today, many eat alone, stare at screens, and feel invisible in crowds. The heart aches because it remembers what it was made for. Depression whispers, "Return to connection." Sometimes the imbalance is in our values. We are taught to measure worth by money, possessions, or online applause. But these are junk values, like junk food. They may excite the senses but leave the soul malnourished. When our lives are built on them, depression rises as a protest. This is not enough. Seek meaning, not just status. Other times, the imbalance lies in our pace of life. We move too fast, consume too much, work without rest. The mind, exhausted, finally shuts down, like a body collapsing after running too far. Depression becomes the body's way of saying, "Slow down, rest, remember you are not a machine." The Cambodian story illustrates this truth with simplicity. A farmer lost his leg to a landmine. He returned to work in the rice fields, but the pain and trauma broke him. He wept all day, unable to rise from bed. Western medicine might have given him pills, but his village listened. They understood the cause of his despair was not only in his body, but in the conditions of his life. So they bought him a cow, allowing him to farm in a new way. Within weeks, his tears dried. His depression lifted. The cow was his antidepressant. What does this story reveal? That depression is not nonsense, not random, not shameful. It is meaningful. It points to causes that can be changed. This is why Buddhism teaches us to look deeply into suffering. When a seed does not sprout, we do not scold the seed. We examine the soil, the water, the sunlight. Depression is a seed not sprouting. The question is not, what is wrong with me, but what conditions are missing for my well-being? Yet here is where compassion is crucial. Too often, society adds blame to pain. The depressed person is told, just cheer up, just think positive, just be stronger. But this only deepens despair. Imagine a man drowning, and instead of reaching out, we shout, "Swim harder." True help begins with listening, with acknowledging that the struggle is real, that the signal is valid. From the Buddhist view, even depression holds the potential for awakening. It strips life bare, forcing us to ask, what really matters? When all the distractions fall silent, we are left with the essential questions: who am I, beyond roles and masks? What gives life meaning? Where is true refuge? These questions are not signs of weakness, they are doorways into wisdom. Of course, in the depth of depression, it is hard to see this. The fog is thick, the night feels endless. That is why community matters. Alone, the signal may overwhelm us. With others, friends, sangha, compassionate guides, the signal becomes bearable, interpretable, transformable. Depression tells us, you cannot carry this alone. Buddhism agrees. The path is walked together. So let us shift the story. Instead of saying, depression is my enemy, my flaw, my brokenness, let us try, depression is my messenger. It is showing me something that must change. Perhaps it is pointing to a need for stillness. Perhaps it is pointing to the poverty of our values. Perhaps it is asking us to seek true belonging. The signal of depression is painful, yes, but signals are not punishments, they are guides. The real danger is not the signal itself, but ignoring it. A warning light, if ignored, leads to breakdown. Depression, if ignored, leads to despair. But if heard with mindfulness and compassion, it leads to transformation. So ask yourself gently, what is my depression trying to tell me? What imbalance in my life needs to be healed? The answer may not come quickly, but the willingness to listen is already the first step back into balance. We live in a time when the word independence is celebrated as the highest good. From childhood we are told, stand on your own feet, rely on no one, carve out your own destiny. On the surface, this sounds noble freedom, strength, self-reliance. But beneath the glitter lies a hidden wound. The more we worship independence, the more we forget our interdependence. And in that forgetting, loneliness spreads like a silent epidemic. Buddhism teaches the principle of interbeing. Nothing exists by itself alone. A flower is made of rain, soil, sunshine, and the gardener's care. You are made of your parents, ancestors, culture, food, and countless conditions stretching across time. To say, I am independent is as absurd as a flower saying, I grew without rain. Independence is not our true nature, interdependence is. And yet, modern society trains us to deny this truth. The economy rewards the individual who competes, not the community that cooperates. Education often measures personal achievement rather than collective wisdom. Even our technologies whisper, you can do everything alone. We can shop, work, entertain ourselves, even seek love through a glowing screen without ever leaning on another human being face to face. What has been the result? The more we insist on standing alone, the more we collapse in silence. The human nervous system was not designed for isolation. We evolved in tribes, banding together for survival. Like bees in a hive, our well-being depends on connection. But we are the first humans to dismantle our hives, to scatter ourselves into individual cells, and the cost is loneliness, aching, invisible, corrosive. Psychologists call loneliness one of the most dangerous conditions of modern life. Studies show it increases the risk of heart disease, weakens the immune system, and shortens lifespan. But beyond physical health, loneliness gnaws at the soul. It whispers, you are unseen, you do not belong. And when enough people believe that whisper, society itself begins to fracture. From the Buddhist view, loneliness arises when we forget anatta, the teaching of non-self. We imagine ourselves as separate, bounded entities. My body, my thoughts, my life. But this is an illusion. Just as a wave cannot exist apart from the ocean, we cannot exist apart from others. Loneliness is the suffering of believing in a separate self. Independence, pushed to its extreme, becomes a prison. Consider the paradox. A society obsessed with independence also creates extreme dependence on screens, on substances, on consumer goods to fill the void left by human absence. We are independent only in the sense that we do not lean on each other. Instead, we lean on things. But things cannot listen. Things cannot hold our grief or laugh at our joys. Things cannot see us as we truly are. Only people can. So what is the Buddhist antidote? It is to remember our true nature of interdependence and to practice Sangha, community. The Buddha himself did not walk the path alone. After his awakening, he founded the Sangha because he knew awakening must be shared. Even he, the enlightened one, invited companions on the journey. If the Buddha needed community, how can we imagine we do not? To build community, is not easy in a culture of independence. Our habits resist. We think, if I ask for help, I am weak. If I lean on others, I am a burden. But these thoughts are the voice of cultural conditioning, not Dharma. In truth, asking for help is a form of offering. It gives others the chance to practice compassion. Leaning on others is not a burden, it is the natural dance of interbeing. Today you lean. Tomorrow you are leaned upon. The tree gives shade, the bird sings, the river flows. Nothing exists for itself alone. The worship of independence also breeds intolerance, because if I must stand alone, then my world must be filled only with those who agree with me, who do not threaten my fragile autonomy. This is why social media so easily fragments into echo chambers. Independence without interdependence cannot tolerate difference. True community, however, is broad enough to hold diversity. The Sangha is not a mirror of yourself. It is a garden of many flowers. Here is the deeper danger. When society abandons responsibility for each other, loneliness becomes unsolvable. Remember, loneliness is the one problem no individual can fix alone. You cannot end your own isolation without another's willingness to meet you. To say, your loneliness is your problem, is to condemn millions to silence. Compassion demands a different response. Your loneliness is also my concern, because your well-being and mine are woven together. This is not only Buddhist wisdom, it is survival wisdom. Our ancestors lived because they held one another. A lone human on the savannah would not last a week. We exist today because they cooperated, shared, and protected each other. To forget this truth is to saw off the very branch we sit on. So let us be honest. The culture of independence is not making us stronger, it is making us fragile. It is not leading to freedom, it is leading to emptiness. True freedom is not standing alone, but standing together, free from illusions of separation. Therefore, when you feel lonely, do not shame yourself. It is not a personal flaw, it is a signal that you are living against your true nature. The cure for loneliness is not more independence, but more interbeing. It is to pick up the phone, to knock on a neighbor's door, to join hands in the work of compassion. It is to remember, we are each other's Sangha. The Buddha compared the Sangha to a raft crossing a river. No plank alone can carry you, but together they bear the weight. In the same way, no isolated self can carry the weight of modern suffering. We need one another. And this need is not weakness, it is our greatest strength. So the question is not whether independence is good or bad. The question is balance. Can we stand on our own feet? Yes, but also extend a hand. Can we be strong individuals? Yes, but also part of a collective body. Can we honor the truth? I am because we are. When we remember this, loneliness becomes less terrifying, because then we see, even if I feel separate, in truth I am not. The rain is in me, the earth is in me, my ancestors are in me, my friends are in me. To breathe is already to connect with the trees. To eat is to touch the farmers and the Sunday. I have never been alone, not for a single moment. This is the vision that can heal our worship of independence. To live not as isolated egos, but as participants in the great dance of interbeing. There is a hunger in the modern heart, not the hunger for food or shelter for many. Those needs are met, but a hunger for meaning. And yet, instead of nourishing this hunger with wisdom and compassion, society feeds us with what Buddhism would call empty calories, wealth, status, appearance, comparison. These are what some psychologists call junk values, attractive on the surface, but hollow within. Think of junk food, bright packaging, sweet taste, quick satisfaction. But what happens when we eat only sugar and grease? The body weakens, disease grows, energy fades. In the same way, junk values excite the senses: new clothes, likes on a post, admiration at a party, but afterward, the soul feels weaker, more restless, more hollow. Buddhism warns us of this trap through the teaching of tanha, or craving. Craving is not simply desire, it is the restless grasping that says, "If I have this, then I will be happy." But no matter how much we acquire, the craving returns. Like drinking salt water, the more we consume, the thirstier we become. This is why chasing status, wealth, or constant praise leaves us empty. It feeds craving, not contentment. Look at social media. We scroll endlessly, comparing our lives to the polished images of others. Each comparison whispers, "You are not enough. You must have more, be more, show more." And so we post, perform, display. Perhaps we receive a rush of approval, 100 hearts, 1,000 views. For a moment, the hunger feels satisfied, but then the emptiness returns, deeper than before. This is the cycle of junk values, a brief high followed by a longer low. Buddhism offers a different perspective. True happiness does not come from external validation, but from internal freedom. The Buddha left behind a palace filled with luxury, not because he despised comfort, but because he saw its emptiness. No amount of gold, no endless entertainment, no praise from courtiers could answer the deeper questions of life. Why do we suffer? What is freedom? What is the nature of the self? This is why the teaching of right view is essential. Right view is not about moralizing, it is about clarity. To see clearly that wealth can provide convenience, but not meaning. That status can impress others, but not bring peace. That comparison can feed the ego, but not nourish the heart. When we see this clearly, we begin to loosen the grip of junk values. Consider this. At the end of life, will anyone count their joy by the number of possessions they owned or the number of followers they had? No. What people remember are moments of love, acts of kindness, experiences of connection. Even those who achieve fame and fortune admit, when the spotlight fades, that these were never enough. Why? Because the deepest human needs are not material. They are psychological and spiritual: belonging, meaning, being truly seen. The Buddha compared the pursuit of junk values to chasing a mirage in the desert. From a distance, it looks like water. The thirsty traveler runs harder, convinced that relief is near. But when he arrives, he finds only sand. Exhausted, he dies of thirst, never realizing that the true water lay within. So what is the Buddhist response to junk values? Not rejection of all pleasure, but discernment. We can enjoy beauty, comfort, and recognition, but we must not mistake them for the source of happiness. Like eating dessert, sweet for a moment, but not a meal. The real nourishment comes from sila, ethical living, samadhi, concentration, and panna, wisdom. These are the true nutrients of the heart. In practical life, this means asking ourselves, why am I chasing this? If the answer is, to prove I am enough, then we are in the trap of junk values. If the answer is, to express love, to create, to serve, then the action carries meaning. A new car, bought for status, breeds emptiness. A simple meal, shared with a friend, nourishes deeply. The difference lies not in the object, but in the intention. This insight is not abstract. Think of the last time you gave something without expecting return. Perhaps a smile, a listening ear, a gift of time. Did it not fill you with warmth more lasting than any purchase? That warmth is the sign of a true value connection, generosity, compassion. These are the foods that satisfy the hunger of the soul. Therefore, the teaching is not to hate wealth or success, but to place them in their rightful place. They are tools, not treasures. They are means, not ends. When they serve compassion and wisdom, they can be wholesome. But when they become idols, they enslave us. So let us reflect. What values are feeding our hearts today? Are we living on junk values, status, comparison, endless craving? Or are we nourishing ourselves with true values, kindness, mindfulness, purpose? The Buddha said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." Likewise, better than 1,000 empty pursuits is one meaningful act that brings joy. May we choose values that nourish, not deplete. May we feed our souls, not our cravings. Once, human beings learned wisdom by sitting in circles around fires, in temples, in marketplaces. We listened to one another, debated, questioned, and discovered truth through dialogue. Today, many of our circles have been replaced by glowing rectangles. Social media promised to connect us, but instead, it often traps us in echo chambers. We hear only what we already believe, see only what confirms our views, and shut out the voices that challenge us. In Buddhism, clinging to fixed views is called ditthi upadana, attachment to opinion. The Buddha warned that this attachment is a root of suffering. Why? Because reality is vast, fluid, and complex, while opinions are narrow and rigid. When we mistake opinion for truth, we close the door to wisdom. Social media amplifies this trap. Algorithms feed us more of what we like, reinforcing our biases until we cannot tolerate difference. Consider how quickly outrage spreads online. A single sentence taken out of context becomes fuel for anger. Strangers gather in mobs, attacking with words sharper than knives. And if someone dares to question the crowd, they are silenced, mocked, or exiled. The Dharma teaches us to welcome dialogue, yet our digital world rewards division. The result: intolerance grows and loneliness deepens. Loneliness? Yes, because intolerance isolates. When we cannot accept differing views, we retreat into smaller and smaller groups, tribes of sameness. But sameness is not connection. True connection requires the spaciousness to hold difference, to listen even when we disagree. Without that, we are not communities. We are islands shouting across an ocean. This is not only a social problem, it is a spiritual one. The Buddha praised samavaka, right speech that is truthful, gentle, and unifying. Yet online speech is often the opposite: distorted, harsh, divisive. Every time we join the storm of condemnation without mindfulness, we add fuel to collective ignorance. Every time we dismiss others as enemies, we reinforce the illusion of separateness. So what is the Buddhist way to approach this digital age? First, to practice mindful consumption. Just as junk food harms the body, junk information harms the mind. Ask yourself, is what I am reading nourishing compassion or feeding anger? Is what I am sharing creating understanding or deepening division? To live mindfully is not only to watch what enters through the mouth, but also what enters through the eyes and ears. Second, to practice deep listening. When someone expresses a view that opposes ours, the instinct is to argue, to defend, to win. But the Dharma invites us to listen first. Perhaps behind their anger is fear. Perhaps behind their harsh words is suffering. If we listen with compassion, we may not agree, but we will understand. And understanding is the beginning of peace. Third, to remember impermanence. Opinions, like emotions, are not fixed. What you believed 10 years ago, do you still hold today? Likely some have changed, so why cling so tightly now? To see opinions as impermanent is to relax our grip, to leave room for growth. Social media thrives on certainty, but wisdom thrives on humility. We must also remember that intolerance does not harm only others, it harms ourselves. Anger poisons the one who holds it. Hatred burns the heart of the hater. When we scroll through posts that enrage us and respond with contempt, we think we are punishing others. But in truth, we are drinking poison ourselves. Buddhism teaches that true community, Sangha, is built not on sameness, but on shared commitment to the path. Monks in the Buddha's time came from many castes and backgrounds. Some were former kings, others former slaves. They disagreed, yet they practiced together. What bound them was not identical views, but shared refuge in the Dharma. This is the model we need for the modern world. Communities wide enough to hold difference, deep enough to practice compassion. There is a Zen story of a monk who disagreed fiercely with his teacher. One day he shouted, "Master, you are wrong." The teacher smiled and said, "Perhaps I am. Let us both sit in silence and see what truth reveals itself." This humility is what our world lacks. We do not need louder voices. We need deeper silence in which understanding can emerge. So let us reflect. Are we feeding intolerance by hiding in echo chambers, or are we cultivating wisdom by opening to difference? Each comment, each share, each click is a seed. Which seeds are we watering? The practice begins small. The next time you read something that angers you, pause, breathe, ask, can I respond with compassion? Can I see the human being behind the words? You may still disagree, but you will not add to the fire. In that pause, you step out of the echo chamber and return to the open field of interbeing. The internet is not inherently evil. Like a knife, it can cut bread or cause harm. The choice lies in how we use it. We can use it to spread division, or we can use it to share compassion, wisdom, and truth. The Buddha would remind us, it is not the tool, but the mind behind it that creates suffering or liberation. Therefore, let us not become islands shouting into the void. Let us become bridges. Let our speech online be guided by right view, right intention, right speech. In this way, even in a digital world, we can practice the ancient art of community, listening, understanding, and awakening together. The Buddha often compared life to a field. In this field, every plant grows because of countless conditions: soil, water, sunlight, air. If even one condition is missing, the plant cannot flourish. In the same way, suffering does not appear out of nowhere. Depression, anxiety, loneliness, these are not random curses or inherent flaws. They are the fruit of conditions. This teaching is known as praticca samutpada, dependent origination. Nothing exists in isolation. Just as a flame needs fuel, depression arises when certain conditions come together. Personal vulnerability, societal pressures, cultural values, unresolved wounds. To reduce depression to only chemistry is to miss the deeper truth. Our suffering is relational. It is shaped by the world we live in, the beliefs we carry, and the attachments we refuse to release. Consider a young tree planted in poor soil. Its leaves droop, its branches weaken. Would we say, the tree is broken? No, we would say, the soil is lacking. Depression is often the cry of the human spirit planted in depleted soil. When our culture feeds us junk values, when community fractures into isolation, when the pace of life leaves no space for rest, suffering blooms. The problem is not only within the individual, it is within the conditions surrounding them. Modern psychology now echoes this. Researchers show that depression is strongly linked to social disconnection, economic stress, and cultural pressure. When people lack control over their work, when they feel unseen, when they rarely touch nature, depression grows. The Buddha's wisdom, spoken 2,600 years ago, is confirmed. Suffering arises through causes and conditions. Attachment is one of the strongest conditions. In Pali, the word is upadana, clinging. We cling to identities, relationships, possessions, beliefs, and when these shift, as all things must we suffer. Depression often follows such losses. A career collapses, a loved one departs, a dream fades. The deeper the clinging, the deeper the despair when change arrives. Yet change is the nature of all phenomena. To cling to permanence in an impermanent world is to guarantee suffering. But here is the liberating truth. If suffering arises through conditions, it can also cease through conditions. Just as a plant wilts when deprived of water, depression softens when nourishing conditions return. Compassion, connection, rest, meaning, mindfulness. These are the rain, sunlight, and fertile soil of the human spirit. We are not doomed by suffering, we are shaped by it. And by changing conditions, we change our lives. Let us take an example. A woman lives in a city apartment, working long hours at a job she cannot control. Her days are filled with screens, her evenings with exhaustion. Slowly, depression begins to grow. She blames herself. I am weak. Something is wrong with me. But look deeper. What are the conditions? Isolation, lack of nature, loss of agency, absence of meaning. It is not simply her fault. It is the natural result of her environment. Now imagine she joins a community garden. She touches soil, feels sunlight, plants seeds with neighbors. She begins to share laughter, to see growth, to create beauty. Slowly, her mood lifts. What changed? Not her essence, but her conditions. The soil of her life became richer, and her spirit responded. This is why Buddhism emphasizes right environment. The Buddha advised his followers to seek wise friends, supportive communities, wholesome surroundings. He knew that no one awakens alone. Just as a lotus requires mud, water, and sunlight, the human heart requires compassion, meaning, and belonging. Place even the healthiest seed in concrete, and it will not sprout. Place a fragile seed in fertile soil, and it will thrive. Understanding dependent origination also frees us from shame. Too often, those who suffer believe they are personally defective. They think depression means they are broken beyond repair. But Buddhism says otherwise. You are not broken, you are conditioned. Your suffering is not a permanent identity, it is a temporary result of causes. And because it is conditioned, it can change. But we must also look at society itself. If millions suffer from depression, we cannot simply medicate individuals and ignore the conditions. A sick tree points to sick soil. A suffering population points to unhealthy systems, economic inequality, disconnection from nature, erosion of community. Healing requires not just pills, but cultural transformation. The Dharma is not only personal, it is collective. Attachment, too, must be addressed. When depression arises from clinging to what is lost, the antidote is letting go. This does not mean indifference, but wisdom. We learn to hold life lightly, to love deeply, without trying to freeze what must change. The Buddha taught, all conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence. To remember this is to suffer less when change comes. So when depression arises, let us ask not, what is wrong with me? but what conditions are present? Is there disconnection? Is there imbalance? Is there clinging? This question shifts the frame from shame to curiosity, from blame to responsibility. It empowers us to adjust the soil of our lives. And when we see another suffering, let us remember the same. Do not judge. Do not say, they are weak. Say instead, what conditions are weighing on them? How can I help restore balance? This shift from judgment to compassion is itself a healing condition. The law of dependent origination is not only a theory, it is a compass. It points us away from fatalism and toward possibility. If suffering arises through conditions, then liberation arises through new conditions. We are not trapped in a broken self. We are participants in a web of causes that can be transformed. Therefore, depression is not a solitary monster lurking within. It is a constellation of conditions. By seeing clearly, we can change those conditions personally, relationally, and collectively. This is the path of the Buddha, to understand suffering, to see its causes, and to walk toward its cessation. The mind is a marvelous tool, but it is also a trickster. When clear, it can illuminate reality like a lamp. When clouded, it can trap us in endless cycles of fear and self-blame. The Buddha compared the untrained mind to a monkey restless, leaping from branch to branch, never still. In our modern age, this monkey is fed with caffeine, notifications, deadlines, and endless streams of information. Overloaded, the mind clings desperately to habits and judgments, trying to survive the storm. This clinging gives rise to anxiety. Imagine standing in a crowded room filled with voices all shouting at once. That is the mind in the digital age. Every message, every opinion, every worry competing for attention. The nervous system, overwhelmed, falls back on shortcuts. If others are anxious, I should be too. If others believe this, it must be true. This is not wisdom, it is survival. And survival, without awareness, breeds suffering. Buddhism teaches that thoughts are not ultimate truth. They are conditioned phenomena, arising and passing like waves. But when the mind is overloaded, we forget this. We believe every thought, especially the harsh ones. I am not good enough. I am failing. I will never change. These judgments are like graffiti painted on the walls of consciousness. They are not reality, but when repeated often, they feel permanent. Why does the mind cling so tightly to these painful thoughts? Because clinging, even to suffering, gives an illusion of control. To criticize oneself feels safer than facing the vast uncertainty of life. If I tell myself I am unworthy, at least I have an explanation for my pain. If I repeat the same anxious habits, at least I know what to expect. The mind fears the unknown more than it fears misery. This is why Buddhism calls ignorance avijja, the root of suffering. Not ignorance as stupidity, but ignorance as forgetting our true nature. When overloaded, the mind mistakes thoughts for self, fear for truth, judgment for wisdom. It clings to its own projections as if they were reality, and in doing so, it imprisons us. Consider anxiety. At its core, anxiety is the mind's attempt to prepare for danger. But when overwhelmed, it begins to see danger everywhere. Every silence becomes rejection. Every challenge becomes catastrophe. The Buddha might remind us, most of the arrows we fear will never be shot. And yet, by imagining them, we wound ourselves again and again. Or consider habits. When stressed, the mind seeks comfort in routines, scrolling late into the night, overeating, repeating toxic relationships. These habits are not truly soothing, they are distractions. They numb the discomfort for a moment but deepen it over time. Like scratching a wound until it bleeds, we mistake temporary relief for healing. And then there is self-judgment, perhaps the cruelest deception of all. A friend may fail and we comfort them, but when we fail, we condemn ourselves mercilessly. You are lazy, you are worthless, you are broken. These words, whispered by our own minds, cut deeper than any external insult. And yet, are they true? The Dharma says no. They are clouds passing across the sky of awareness. Painful, yes, but impermanent and insubstantial. So how do we free ourselves from the deceptions of the overloaded mind? The Buddha offered the practice of sati mindfulness. Mindfulness allows us to step back and see thoughts as thoughts, not truths. When judgment arises, we can note, here is a thought of unworthiness. Already distance is created. Already the deception is weakened. Another practice is metta, loving kindness. When the mind clings to harsh self-criticism, we counter with compassion. May I be well. May I be free from suffering. At first, the words may feel mechanical, but repeated gently, they soften the grip of judgment. They remind the mind that kindness is also an option. We must also learn to rest the mind. Just as the body collapses under constant strain, the mind collapses under constant input. Silence, meditation, time in nature, these are not luxuries but necessities. When we unplug from the noise, the monkey mind gradually calms. Only then can we see clearly which thoughts are useful and which are deceptions. The Buddha compared the mind to a chariot. If left unattended, the horses run wild, dragging us into suffering. But with mindfulness as the reins and wisdom as the driver, the chariot moves steadily along the path. The horses do not disappear, but they are guided. Anxiety may still arise, habits may still whisper, judgments may still appear, but they no longer control the journey. Remember this, the mind is not your enemy, it is simply overwhelmed. It clings to fear, habits, and judgment because it has forgotten its spacious nature. With practice, you can remind it. You can show it that beneath the storm of thoughts lies a sky of clarity. You are not the graffiti on the wall. You are the wall itself, vast, steady, unbroken. So the next time the mind deceives you with anxiety, habits, or self-blame, pause. Smile gently and say, I see you. I will not fight you, but I will not believe you either. In that moment, you reclaim your freedom. The deceptive mind may be restless, but the awakened heart is steady, and when the heart steadies, the deceptions lose their power. Loneliness is often described as the feeling of being cut off, of standing on an island while life flows on without us. It is heavy, aching, and deeply human. Yet Buddhism offers a radical perspective. Loneliness, though painful, is an illusion. Why? Because the self we believe is separate never truly existed. The division we feel is not reality, but delusion. This is the teaching of anatta, non-self. We believe we are a solid I, an independent entity with fixed boundaries. But look closer. Where does this I begin and end? Your body is made of food, water, air, things not you at all. Your thoughts are shaped by culture, parents, teachers, friends. Even your breath cannot exist without trees, oceans, and the atmosphere. What you call self is a stream of interdependent conditions. Remove the conditions, and the I dissolves. Thich Nhat Hanh used the term interbeing. He said, you cannot be by yourself alone. You can only interbe. The paper on which a sutra is written contains sunshine, rain, soil, and logger. The loneliness we feel comes from forgetting this truth. We imagine a hard boundary around the self, and then mourn our isolation within it. But the boundary is not real. Think of a wave on the ocean. If the wave believes, "I am separate, I must rise higher than others, I must not fall," it will suffer terribly. But when the wave remembers, "I am water," the fear of separation fades. Whether rising or falling, it is never apart from the ocean. Loneliness is the wave forgetting it is water. In modern life, this forgetting is reinforced everywhere. Society praises the self-made person, the individual achiever. We are encouraged to see ourselves as isolated units, competing in a vast marketplace of worth. No wonder loneliness grows. We are trained to deny our interconnection. But Buddhism says, "You have never been alone, not for a single breath." Every inhalation carries the trees within you. Every sip of water carries clouds and rivers within you. Every word you speak carries the voices of ancestors and teachers. How could you ever be separate? Loneliness arises when we forget this truth, when we believe the story of isolation. This does not mean the feeling of loneliness is false. The pain is real. But the story behind the pain, that we are cut off, unloved, unseen, is built on illusion. And when we learn to see through it, the suffering lessens. Consider meditation. When sitting in silence, loneliness may arise. I am here, alone with my thoughts. But if we breathe deeply, we begin to notice, this body is not alone. The earth supports it. The breath connects it to trees. The cushion was sewn by others. The silence is filled with countless lives moving outside the window. In truth, we are never alone in meditation. We are always surrounded by interbeing. Another example. Imagine feeling abandoned by friends. Loneliness whispers, "No one cares." But if we look carefully, we may see care in unexpected places. The farmer who grew the food on our table, the driver who delivered it, the stranger who held the door, the teacher who once gave us knowledge. We are sustained by invisible networks of love and labor. To remember this is to pierce the illusion of isolation. The Buddha taught that clinging to self creates suffering. Loneliness is one form of this clinging. We cling to the idea that I am separate, and then grieve that no one bridges the gap. But the gap is an illusion. When we let go of the rigid self, the walls fall away. We begin to sense connection not as something we must achieve, but as something already present. This insight does not erase the human need for companionship. We still long for intimacy, friendship, community, but it transforms the way we hold that longing. Instead of clinging in desperation, we approach others from fullness, not lack. We do not seek others to complete us, but to share the completeness we already are. To see loneliness as illusion is to free ourselves from despair. For even when human company is absent, interbeing remains. Sitting alone in a room, you are still breathing with the trees, supported by the earth, warmed by the Sunday. In the deepest sense, you are never alone. So the next time loneliness grips your heart, pause. Place a hand on your chest. Feel the heartbeat. Know that this rhythm is not yours alone. It is the drumbeat of generations, of countless ancestors whose blood flows in you. Know that your breath is not yours alone. It is shared with the whole biosphere. Smile gently and whisper, I am. Loneliness is heavy when believed, but light when seen through. It is the wave awakening to its ocean nature. It is the self dissolving into interbeing. It is the illusion of separation giving way to the truth of connection. When the ocean is stormy, the waves rise high, crashing with fury. But deep below, in the still depths, the water is calm. Mindfulness is like that depth. It is the anchor that holds us steady when storms of pain, fear, or anger rage on the surface. Without mindfulness, we are tossed helplessly by every wave. With mindfulness, we learn to sit in the storm without drowning, to recognize pain not as identity but as a passing phenomenon. The Buddha compared mindfulness sati to a lamp that illuminates the darkness. Pain, when unexamined, feels like a vast, overwhelming shadow. We say, "I am my pain, I am my sadness, I am broken." But mindfulness shines light, revealing, "This is not me, not mine, not myself. This is only a sensation, a thought, a passing condition." How do we practice this? Begin with the breath. Breathing in, we know we are breathing in. Breathing out, we know we are breathing out. Simple, yet profound. The breath is always here, always now. When the mind wanders into fear of the future or regret of the past, the breath anchors us in the present moment. And in the present, pain is never as unbearable as the stories we tell about it. Consider physical pain. Without mindfulness, a headache becomes, "This will ruin my day. Why do I always suffer? Something must be terribly wrong." The mind multiplies the pain. But with mindfulness, we observe, here is a pulsing sensation in the head. It arises, it peaks, it falls. We breathe with it, we watch it as we would watch a cloud. Already, the suffering is reduced. The pain remains, but it is no longer magnified by resistance. The same is true for emotional pain. Without mindfulness, sadness says, "I am worthless. I will always be alone." The thought fuses with identity, but with mindfulness, we see, here is sadness, a heavy feeling in the chest, a thought saying, "I am worthless." We notice, we name, we breathe. In naming, we create space. In breathing, we soften. And in that space, sadness becomes just another passing guest, not the landlord of our lives. Thich Nhat Hanh often taught, mindfulness is like the Sunday when the sun shines on a flower, the flower opens. When mindfulness shines on pain, the pain begins to transform. This does not mean pain disappears instantly, but it loses its power to dominate us. By observing with gentle awareness, we shift from being the prisoner of pain to being its witness. There is a story of a monk bitten by a snake. In agony, he cried out, but his teacher told him, "Do not become the snake bite twice. The first arrow is pain. The second arrow is your mind saying, 'This is unbearable. I cannot survive.'" Mindfulness removes the second arrow. It allows us to feel the pain without adding the poison of fear and resistance. Modern neuroscience confirms this. Studies show that people trained in mindfulness experience less suffering from the same pain than those without training. The difference is not in the pain itself, but in the way the brain relates to it. The Buddha's ancient teaching aligns with the latest science. Suffering is not only what happens to us, but how we hold what happens. But mindfulness is not only about observation, it is about compassion. When we sit with pain, we do not glare at it harshly. We cradle it gently, like a mother holding her crying child. We whisper inwardly, "I know you are here. I will take care of you." This tenderness transforms the relationship with pain. It is no longer an enemy, but a part of us needing care. In Buddhist meditation, this is called embracing the inner child. When old wounds rise, memories of rejection, fear, shame, we breathe and place a hand on the heart. We say, "Dear one, I am here for you." Suddenly, the pain that once seemed unbearable softens. It is not that the wound vanishes, but that it is no longer abandoned. Mindfulness makes us present to ourselves, and presence heals. There is also wisdom in seeing pain as impermanent. When we sit with mindfulness, we notice that every sensation, even the sharpest, changes moment by moment. The ache throbs, then eases, then shifts location, then fades. Seeing this, we realize pain is not a monolith, it is a process, and all processes change. This realization brings hope, even in dark times. Imagine sitting beside a river. The water flows, carrying leaves, twigs, even debris. If you jump in, you are swept away. But if you sit on the bank, you can watch everything pass. Mindfulness places us on the bank of our own mind. Thoughts, fears, and pains float by. We see them, we acknowledge them, but we do not drown in them. This practice is not easy. When pain surges, the instinct is to escape, distract, numb, suppress. But Buddhism teaches, the only way out is through. To run from pain is to remain its prisoner. To sit with it, breathe with it, see it as phenomenon that is the path to freedom. So the next time pain arises, try this. Pause. Breathe in and know. Breathing in, I feel pain. Breathe out and know. Breathing out, I hold this pain with care. Do not fight. Do not cling. Simply be with it as sky is with clouds. Over time, you will discover you are not your pain. Pain is a phenomenon arising, existing, fading. You are the awareness that witnesses, steady and vast. Mindfulness is the anchor that reveals this truth, again and again. In this way, mindfulness does not only reduce suffering, it transforms suffering into wisdom. Pain becomes teacher, fear becomes guide, sadness becomes doorway. And through it all, mindfulness keeps us anchored steady in the storm, rooted in the now, free in the very midst of suffering. The Buddha taught that all beings long for happiness and seek to avoid suffering. Yet in our striving, many of us treat ourselves more harshly than we would ever treat another. We show kindness to friends, forgiveness to strangers, even compassion to animals, yet when it comes to our own hearts, we wield judgment like a whip. You are not good enough. You should be stronger. You do not deserve rest. These inner voices are wounds disguised as discipline. But Buddhism invites a gentler path, compassion for oneself. This is not selfishness nor indulgence. It is recognizing that you, too, are a being on the path, deserving of care. Just as a mother soothes a child, just as a monk tends a garden, you must learn to hold your own heart with tenderness. Only then can you offer authentic compassion to others. Think of a cup. If it is empty, what can it give? If we are drained, self-critical, and exhausted, our compassion for others becomes forced, fragile, or resentful. But when the cup is filled, when we nourish ourselves with understanding and kindness, we can pour freely into the lives of others. To say, I am enough, is not arrogance. It is the foundation of true giving. Thich Nhat Hanh often reminded his students, to take care of yourself is to take care of the world. Why? Because the quality of our inner state flows into every interaction. A harsh word spoken to ourselves becomes a harshness toward others. A seed of kindness planted in the self blossoms as patience, generosity, and love in community. But how do we practice compassion for ourselves in daily life? The first step is awareness. Notice the inner critic when it speaks. Catch the voice that says, "You are failing. You should have done more. You will never be worthy." Instead of believing it, pause, breathe, recognize, this is a thought, not truth. This is pain, not identity. Already the chain of self-judgment weakens. The second step is to replace criticism with gentleness. When a mistake arises, instead of declaring war on yourself, whisper, "It is human to err. May I learn. May I grow." Imagine speaking to yourself as you would to a dear friend. Would you condemn them for stumbling, or would you encourage them to rise again? Offer yourself the same kindness. A powerful Buddhist practice for cultivating self-compassion is metta meditation, or loving-kindness meditation. Begin by sitting quietly, breathing deeply. Place a hand on your heart. Silently repeat, "May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be free from suffering. May I be at peace." At first, these words may feel mechanical, even false, but over time they sink into the heart. They soften the walls of self-hatred. They remind us, we too deserve love. This does not mean we excuse harmful actions or deny responsibility. True compassion holds us accountable, but without cruelty. When a child spills milk, the parent cleans and teaches, but does not despise the child. In the same way, self-compassion allows us to correct mistakes without collapsing into shame. It transforms discipline from punishment into care. Modern psychology echoes this ancient truth. Research shows that self-compassion reduces anxiety, increases resilience, and improves relationships. People who treat themselves with kindness are less afraid of failure, more open to learning, and more generous toward others. In short, to love yourself is to strengthen your capacity to love the world. Yet many resist. They fear self-compassion will make them weak, complacent, or lazy. But the opposite is true. Self-hatred paralyzes. Self-compassion empowers. When you believe you are worthless, you give up. When you believe you are enough, you try again. Compassion is not the enemy of growth. It is its engine. The Buddha taught that to love others as yourself, you must first know how to love yourself. Otherwise, love becomes attachment, control, or projection. But when you sit in peace with your own heart, relationships flow from freedom. You do not seek others to complete you. You meet them as a whole being offering wholeness. So, pause for a moment now. Place your hand on your chest. Feel your heart beat. Whisper softly, "I am enough." Not because I am perfect, but because I am alive. Not because I never fail, but because I learn. Not because I earn worth, but because I already have it. Let these words sink in like rain into dry soil. Notice how the heart softens. Notice how the breath deepens. This is the taste of self-compassion. And when you rise from this practice, you will find the world feels different. Strangers' faces seem gentler. The burdens of others feel closer to your own. Compassion flows naturally because the river has been unblocked at its source. The lotus does not ask permission to bloom. It simply opens because that is its nature. In the same way, compassion is your nature. All it asks is that you stop crushing it with self-hatred. Allow it to bloom within you, and it will naturally bloom around you. When we suffer, the natural instinct is to turn inward, to focus on our own wounds. Depression says, protect yourself. Loneliness says, stay hidden. Anxiety says, don't risk connection. And yet, paradoxically, one of the most powerful ways to heal ourselves is to turn outward to ease the suffering of another. In Buddhism, this is not a trick or manipulation. It is the very nature of interbeing. When we care for others, we are at the same time caring for ourselves. Why is this so? Because the boundary between self and other is thinner than we think. The Buddha taught that suffering is universal. Every being, in its own way, struggles. To extend compassion outward is to align with the truth of existence. When you recognize another's loneliness and offer a hand, you are not just performing charity, you are touching the shared human condition. And in that recognition, your own loneliness softens. Consider the story of a woman trapped in despair. Day after day, she remained in bed, overwhelmed by depression. A teacher suggested, each morning, before you think of yourself, write a letter of kindness to someone, anyone, a friend, a stranger, even someone you have lost. At first she resisted. How can I give when I am empty? But she tried. Slowly, letter by letter, she felt her heart expand. By easing others' burdens with her words, she lightened her own. Service became medicine. This principle is deeply Buddhist. The practice of dana, generosity, is the first perfection, paramita, of the bodhisattva path. Why first? Because when we give, we break the prison of self-absorption, the walls of me soften, and the flow of connection returns. Depression thrives in isolation, generosity dissolves it. Helping others does not require grand gestures. You do not need to save the world. A simple smile, a listening ear, an invitation to tea, these small acts ripple outward, and their echo returns to you. A Zen master once said, "If you want to be happy, make someone else happy." This is not sentimentality, it is karmic law. What we offer multiplies within us. Even science agrees. Research shows that acts of kindness release oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which lowers stress and increases well-being. People who volunteer regularly report less depression and longer lives. It seems the Buddha's teaching is inscribed not only in scripture, but in our biology. Compassion heals the giver as well as the receiver. But here is the subtlety. To truly heal, helping must arise from compassion, not ego. If we help others only to prove our worth, or to escape our own pain, the act becomes hollow. But if we help with presence, with a sincere wish for another's ease, the healing is mutual. The intention matters. A cup of water offered with love nourishes more deeply than a banquet given for pride. There is also a paradoxical strength in serving while broken. Many believe they must first be fully healed before helping others. But Buddhism teaches that the wounded can be healers too. The bodhisattva is not one who waits for perfection before serving. They step into the world as they are, bringing compassion born of their own scars. In fact, it is often those who have suffered who can most deeply understand another's suffering. Imagine sitting with a friend who is lonely. You too have known loneliness. When you listen, you do not judge, you do not hurry to fix. You simply sit, present and kind. In that moment, both of you are healed. Their burden is lighter, and your own heart feels less alone. The illusion of separateness dissolves. This is why the Buddha encouraged community practice Sangha. In Sangha, we take turns holding one another. Sometimes you are the one supported. Sometimes you are the one offering support. But always, the healing flows both ways. The giver is healed by giving, the receiver by receiving. So how can we practice this in daily life? Begin small. Each day, ask, whose burden can I ease today? Perhaps send a message of gratitude. Perhaps cook a meal. Perhaps simply smile at a stranger. Do not underestimate the power of small actions. A single candle can light hundreds without losing its flame, and each flame lit is also light reflected back to you. In your darkest moments, when despair whispers, you have nothing to give, remember this: you still have presence, you still have breath, you still have the ability to listen. These are treasures greater than gold. Offer them, and you will see how the act of giving rekindles your own light. Helping others is not a detour from healing, it is the path itself. As Shantideva, the great Buddhist teacher, said, "All the joy the world contains comes from wishing happiness for others. All the misery the world contains comes from wishing pleasure only for oneself." To shift from self-absorption to compassion is to shift from misery to joy. So when you feel lost, try this. Step outside yourself. Look into another's eyes. Ask, "How may I serve?" You may discover that in easing their loneliness, your own heart finally breathes. There is a story from Cambodia that has been told again and again because it reveals a truth so simple yet so profound that it shakes our understanding of healing. It begins not with medicine but with suffering. A farmer lost his leg to a landmine left behind from war. The villagers fitted him with a crude artificial limb, and after a time he returned to the rice fields. But imagine, to work knee, deep in water with a wooden leg, in the very field where your trauma was born. Each step was agony. The memories burned as sharply as the physical pain. He began to cry constantly, refusing to leave his bed. In Western language, we would call this depression. A Western doctor might prescribe antidepressants, explaining that his brain chemistry is imbalanced. But the Cambodian doctors offered something else. They sat with him. They listened. They understood that his despair made sense. It was not simply in his head, but in the conditions of his life. And then they suggested a solution. What if we buy him a cow? With a cow, he could become a dairy farmer. He would no longer need to stand in the muddy fields that tortured both body and memory. He could sustain himself, contribute to the village, and reclaim purpose. The community pooled resources, bought him a cow, and supported his new livelihood. Within weeks, his tears dried. Within a month, his depression lifted. When asked about antidepressants, the doctors smiled and said, "The cow was the medicine." What does this story teach us? That community is the most powerful antidepressant of all. Healing does not always come from a pill, but from connection, meaning, and compassion. Depression is not merely a chemical imbalance, it is also a life imbalance. When we restore balance through care and purpose, the mind begins to heal. From the Buddhist perspective, this is right view in action. Instead of reducing suffering to biology, it sees suffering in its full web of causes and conditions: physical, emotional, social, spiritual. The farmer's depression was not random. It arose from pain, trauma, disconnection, and lack of purpose. By changing those conditions through the cow and the support of the community, the suffering eased. This echoes the Buddha's teaching of dependent origination. Suffering arises when causes align. Remove the causes, and suffering diminishes. The Cambodian villagers practiced Dharma without perhaps naming it so. They did not blame the farmer, nor see him as broken. They saw his humanity, his pain, his need for new conditions, and through compassion they provided them. How different this is from the culture many of us live in today. Too often when someone suffers, we say, "It's your problem, fix it yourself." Loneliness, depression, despair are treated as personal failures rather than social signals. But the Cambodian story reminds us, the responsibility for healing does not rest only on the individual. It is a collective task. We heal together, or not at all. This is why the Buddha emphasized Sangha community as one of the three jewels, alongside the Buddha and the Dharma. The Sangha is not an optional extra. It is essential to the path, because when one suffers, the whole Sangha responds. Healing is not private property, it is shared life. The cow, then, is not merely an animal, it is a symbol of compassion in action. It represents the truth that healing is practical, grounded, relational. The cow gave the farmer food, work, dignity. But even more, it gave him the experience of being cared for, of being held by his community. That care was as nourishing as milk itself. Reflect on your own life. When you were in despair, what helped most? Was it advice shouted from a distance, or was it the presence of someone who listened, who acted, who offered practical love? Healing rarely comes from abstract theories. It comes from concrete compassion, like a cow gifted by a village. Modern society often isolates us, convincing us that problems must be solved individually. But depression, loneliness, and despair are not individual in nature. They are symptoms of disconnection, and the cure is reconnection. To hold each other's pain, to respond with care, to create conditions where life can thrive again, that is the true medicine. The Cambodian doctors did not just heal one man, they healed the whole village, because when one suffers, everyone is affected, and when one is lifted, everyone is strengthened. This is the principle of interbeing. Your joy is my joy, your suffering is my suffering. Healing is never solitary, it is always shared. So, what is the cow in your life, or in the life of someone you know? Perhaps it is not an animal but a gesture, a job opportunity, a supportive conversation, a shared meal, a circle of friends. Perhaps it is offering your time, your presence, your listening. Whatever form it takes, it carries the same spirit, to change conditions of suffering into conditions of hope. The Cambodian story is not folklore, it is Dharma alive. It reminds us that the deepest medicine is compassion in community. Pills may help some, and science has its place, but without human connection, healing is incomplete. Depression is not cured by isolation, it is eased by belonging. So let us become villagers for one another. Let us ask, when we see suffering, what is their cow? What practical act of compassion can restore balance for them? And when we are the ones in pain, let us have the courage to receive the cow, to accept help, to remember that healing is not weakness, but our shared humanity. The cow is not just an animal, it is a teaching that the truest antidepressant is love made tangible. In many parts of the world, when a person suffers from depression or anxiety, the reflex is to prescribe a pill. And indeed, medicine can bring relief. It has its place. But Buddhism invites us to look deeper. Suffering is not only chemical, it is existential. A pill may soothe the mind, but it cannot plant roots of meaning. For that, we need connection with people, with nature, with purpose. This is where the idea of social prescribing enters a practice that echoes the Dharma in unexpected ways. In East London, a doctor named Sam Everington faced a dilemma. His clinic overflowed with patients crippled by depression. Many had already tried antidepressants. Some found temporary relief, but most returned again and again, their spirits still heavy. Dr. Everington realized the issue was not only biological, it was social, environmental, and spiritual. So he prescribed something radical, not just medicine, but community. One patient, Lisa, had been locked in her home for 7 years, paralyzed by depression and anxiety. She could barely step outside without trembling. Instead of only adjusting her medication, Dr. Everington invited her into an experiment. Twice a week, she would meet with others who suffered similarly, not to discuss despair, but to do something together. They decided to turn a patch of scrubland behind the clinic into a garden. At first, Lisa could barely enter the group. The anxiety was overwhelming. She even vomited at the first meeting. But the others comforted her, and slowly she returned. Week by week, hands touched soil, seeds were planted, laughter arose. As flowers bloomed, Lisa bloomed too. She began to leave her house with joy, to greet neighbors, to feel useful again. The garden was her medicine. What healed her? Not only the sunlight, or the soil, or the fresh air, though all were vital. It was the experience of belonging, of being part of something that mattered, something alive. In Buddhist terms, it was a return to Sangha and to interbeing. For in the garden, Lisa discovered, "I am not alone. My suffering is not mine alone. Together, we can cultivate joy." This is social prescribing, healing through meaningful activity and connection. Gardening, music groups, walking clubs, art circles, each becomes a form of therapy when infused with community. And from the Buddhist view, this is profoundly wise. For the Dharma teaches that the roots of suffering are not only in the mind, but in disconnection from life itself. Nature, in particular, is a powerful healer. The Buddha attained enlightenment beneath a tree, not inside a building. For weeks, he sat with the earth as witness. He taught that to touch the earth is to touch stability, to ground ourselves in what is real. Today, science confirms what the Buddha knew. Exposure to nature reduces stress, lifts mood, and restores balance to the nervous system. When we garden, we are not only planting seeds in soil, we are planting seeds of peace in the heart. There is also something profoundly symbolic in gardening. Depression says, nothing will change. But when you plant a seed and watch it sprout, you see impermanence firsthand. Life moves, grows, transforms. This lived experience counters despair. The garden whispers, you too can change. You too can bloom. Social prescribing also heals the illusion of separateness. Working side by side, people begin to listen, to laugh, to share. They move beyond I into we. In Buddhism, this is the medicine of compassion. For when we tend to plants together, we also tend to each other. The weeds we pull from the soil become metaphors for the weeds of suffering we help remove from one another's hearts. This does not mean medicine is useless. The Dharma never rejects practical tools. Pills can help stabilize, can make the soil less rocky, but without rain, sunlight, and care, no seed can flourish. Likewise, without connection, purpose, and nature, healing remains incomplete. The cow in Cambodia and the garden in London both reveal the same truth. Community is not an optional extra, it is medicine. So let us ask, what is our garden? Where can we prescribe ourselves not only pills but presence? Perhaps it is a local park where neighbors meet, a circle of friends reading together, a kitchen where meals are shared. Healing does not always come in bottles. Sometimes it sprouts from soil and laughter. In this way, social prescribing is not merely a modern innovation, it is the Buddha's teaching lived anew. To sit together, to cultivate the earth, to breathe with the sky, these are ancient medicines. They remind us that well-being is not found only in treating symptoms, but in restoring balance with life itself. Therefore, when suffering feels unbearable, do not ask only, what pill will fix me? Ask also, what connections will nourish me? What community will hold me? What soil will ground me? For the true antidepressant may not be hidden in a capsule, but blooming quietly in a garden, waiting for you to join. Why do we suffer so deeply from loneliness? Why does isolation cut so sharply into the human spirit? To answer, we must look not only at psychology but also at our history. Human beings did not evolve as solitary hunters or isolated thinkers. We survived because we lived in tribes. Belonging was not a luxury, it was our lifeline. To be cast out from the tribe was once a death sentence. This memory, etched into our nervous system, still lives in us today. The Buddha knew this truth well. After his awakening, he did not keep the Dharma to himself. He immediately sought companions, creating the Sangha. Why? Because he saw that liberation flourishes in community. Just as a forest is made of countless trees standing together, a sangha is made of countless beings supporting one another. Each tree protects the other from storms. Each practitioner shelters the other from despair. Belonging is not optional, it is our nature. Modern science now echoes this ancient wisdom. Anthropologists remind us that our ancestors survived not because they were the fastest or the strongest, but because they were the most cooperative. A lone human on the savannah could not outrun a lion or take down a buffalo. But together, humans thrived. Connection was our superpower. To disband the tribe, then, is to disband the very conditions that made us human. And yet, that is precisely what modern society has done. We have scattered into individual units, each family in its own house, each person in their own digital bubble. The tribe has dissolved into millions of isolated selves. And though we may not be stalked by lions, the nervous system still reads isolation as danger. No wonder anxiety rises. No wonder depression spreads. We are trying to live against our nature. The Buddha's teaching of anatta, non-self, reminds us that what we call I is not a fixed, separate unit. We are streams of interbeing, made of countless others. Your breath is not only yours, it belongs also to trees. Your thoughts are not only yours, they are shaped by parents, culture, ancestors. To live as if you are independent is to live in illusion, and illusion always leads to suffering. Think of a bee. Alone, it cannot survive. Its life depends on the hive. And yet, each bee plays its role, gathering nectar, building combs, protecting the queen. Humans are like this too. Our tribe may not wear animal skins or sit around fires, but the principle is the same. We are healthiest when we contribute, belong, and share. The tragedy of disbanding the tribe is not only that we lose others, but that we lose ourselves. When no one reflects our worth, we doubt it. When no one sees our gifts, we bury them. When no one calls our name, we forget who we are. Belonging is the mirror in which the self recognizes itself. Without it, identity frays. This is why exile has always been one of the harshest punishments. To be cast out was worse than death because it meant to be forgotten. In a subtler way, many people today live in exile, exiled from family, from community, from shared rituals, and the result is the silent epidemic of loneliness. But Buddhism offers hope. If suffering arises from the loss of tribe, healing arises from its return. This does not mean we must recreate ancient villages, but that we must restore the spirit of belonging. Sangha is the modern tribe. It may be a meditation group, a circle of friends, a community garden, or even a family dinner. Wherever people gather with compassion and mutual care, the tribe lives again. The Buddha compared Sangha to a raft. Alone, you cannot cross the river of suffering, but together you build a raft strong enough to carry all. Each person is a plank. Together they float. Belonging is the raft that carries us toward liberation. Belonging also transforms our perspective. Alone, problems feel unbearable, but in a group, they are shared. One person's strength balances another's weakness. One person's wisdom answers another's confusion. In this way, the Sangha is not only support, but medicine. It heals the illusion of separateness. So let us reflect. Where is your tribe? Perhaps it is missing. Perhaps you have drifted, as many have, into isolation. If so, the invitation is clear. Seek community. Not a perfect one, such a thing does not exist, but a real one, where human beings stumble and forgive, fall and rise together. And if you already have a tribe, cherish it. Tend it as you would a fire. Feed it with presence, honesty, and care, for belonging is not static. it must be nourished. Just as plants need water, tribes need compassion. Without it, they wither. With it, they flourish. In truth, you have never been separate from tribe. Even now, as you read these words, you are held by countless beings, the farmers who grew your food, the builders who raised your shelter, the strangers who keep the roads and hospitals running. To recognize this is to awaken gratitude. The tribe has not left you, it is everywhere. What is missing is your awareness of it. Therefore, loneliness is not only a personal problem, it is a collective one, and the cure is not only within but between. To heal yourself, rebuild tribe. To heal society, restore belonging. To heal the world, remember interbeing. Our ancestors survived by holding one another. We will survive the crises of our time the same way. The Buddha's Sangha is not a relic of the past, it is the blueprint of the future. When depression descends, it often feels like betrayal. The body is heavy, the heart dull, the mind whispers, "I cannot go on." We are told this is failure, illness, weakness. Yet Buddhism invites another perspective. Depression is not merely malfunction, it is protest. It is the mind and spirit refusing to continue along a path that has lost meaning. Think of a worker in a factory. Day after day they labor at a machine, producing objects that bring no joy. Eventually their body collapses, not from laziness, but from exhaustion and protest. This is not life. Depression functions in a similar way. It is the soul's strike, a silent rebellion against a life drained of purpose. The Buddha spoke of sama ajiva, right livelihood. He knew that when our actions lack meaning, when they contradict our deepest values, suffering arises. Depression is often the voice of this truth. It whispers, "You are not aligned. You are living by junk values, chasing what does not satisfy. You cannot continue blindly." Consider the epidemic of overwork in our age. Many rise before dawn, commute through stress, labor under fluorescent lights, and return home too exhausted to love or create. The reward? A paycheck, a title, perhaps a few fleeting possessions. But where is meaning? Where is joy? Depression in this context is not pathology. It is the body and mind saying, "I refuse to be a machine." From the Buddhist view, this is not a curse but an invitation. Depression asks, what is truly meaningful? What is worth living for? These questions are not signs of weakness, they are the gateway to wisdom. The great teachers all passed through dark nights of the soul, when old ways collapsed and new truths demanded to be seen. The story of Siddhartha Gautama illustrates this. Though he had every luxury palace, family, wealth, he was dissatisfied. Surrounded by pleasure, he felt emptiness. When he finally saw sickness, old age, and death, his spirit protested, "This life of comfort does not answer the deepest questions." He left the palace, not out of despair alone, but because despair had revealed the falseness of his former path. Depression, in this sense, is the doorway through which awakening enters. But how do we hold depression as protest without being crushed by it? First, by reframing it. Instead of asking, "Why am I broken?" ask, "What is this protest pointing to?" Perhaps it reveals that your work lacks purpose. Perhaps it shows your relationships are shallow, built on appearance rather than truth. Perhaps it warns that you have neglected creativity, rest, or connection with nature. Depression does not appear randomly, it signals imbalance. Second, we must meet the protest with compassion, not suppression. To medicate blindly, to numb endlessly, is like silencing a worker's strike with threats. The factory may resume, but the injustice remains. Medicine may stabilize, And this can be helpful, but if the underlying imbalance is ignored, the soul will continue to cry out. The Buddha's path is to listen deeply, not to silence prematurely. Third, we must rediscover meaning. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the concentration camps, taught that humans can endure almost any suffering if they have a why. Depression strips life of its false whys, money, image, status, so that we can search for a true one. This is why so many, after walking through depression, emerge with new clarity. They become artists, healers, teachers, seekers of truth. The collapse was not the end, it was the beginning. In Buddhist practice, meaning is found not in grand achievements but in alignment with the Dharma. When our actions express compassion, when our livelihood does not harm, when our days include mindfulness, we feel rooted. Depression as protest fades because the soul recognizes, now I walk with purpose. Still, let us be honest. When we are inside depression, meaning feels distant. The protest can seem like silence, heavy and dark. This is why community is vital. Alone, the protest feels unbearable. With Sangha, with friends, we are reminded that the strike has a message, that transformation is possible. Others hold the faith when we cannot. So if you are in depression now, remember, you are not defective. You are not weak. You are protesting against a life that has lost meaning. Listen gently. Ask, what am I being called to change? What values must I release? What truth must I seek? The answers may not come quickly, but even the act of asking plants seeds of renewal. Depression is not the end of the path. It is a gate. It says, do not continue blindly. It stops us, forces us to pause, and in that pause, space opens for something new. The lotus blooms not in clear water, but in mud. Depression is that mud, thick, heavy, unavoidable, but without it, there is no lotus of awakening. When the Buddha spoke of samyak ahara, right nourishment, he did not mean only food for the body, he meant nourishment for the heart and mind. What we consume through our senses, what we watch, listen to, read, and dwell upon, becomes the fabric of our consciousness. Just as junk food weakens the body, junk input weakens the mind. In our age of consumerism and distraction, we are suffering from both malnourished bodies and poisoned souls. Think of junk food. It is engineered for craving salt, sugar, fat, designed to hijack the brain's reward system. A few bites feel satisfying, but soon the body grows sick, bloated, fatigued. In the same way, consumer culture offers us junk mind food, endless advertisements, sensational headlines, quick dopamine hits from likes and clicks. They satisfy for a moment, but leave us empty, restless, craving more. This is not accidental. Our economy thrives on keeping us hungry not for rice or vegetables, but for novelty, for comparison, for distraction. A society that could rest content would not keep buying, and so we are trained to believe. Happiness is in the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next scroll. But as the Buddha taught, craving tanha never satisfies. It only multiplies. Consider how we spend our days. The first thing many touch upon waking is not the earth or the breath, but a phone. Before the sun rises, we are already consuming emails, news, images of lives curated to appear shinier than our own. This is breakfast for the mind, but it is breakfast of junk. No wonder we begin the day restless, comparing, anxious. The Dharma reminds us, what we feed will grow. Feed anger with news that inflames, and anger grows. Feed envy with images of status, and envy grows. Feed fear with constant negativity, and fear grows. This is junk mind, food empty of nourishment, rich in poison. But unlike the body, the damage is subtler. You cannot weigh the soul and see it bloated. You cannot scan the mind and see its arteries clogged with distraction. The suffering reveals itself instead as anxiety, depression, numbness. People say, "I don't know why I feel so empty." The reason is not hidden. The reason is diet what we consume every day through eyes and ears. The Buddha offered a different diet: mindfulness, compassion, wisdom. Just as wholesome food strengthens the body, wholesome input strengthens the mind. A walk in nature is nourishment. A moment of silence is nourishment. A sutra, a song of kindness, a conversation of depth, these feed the spirit. Thich Nhat Hanh used to ask his students, "What are you feeding your consciousness today?" He compared consciousness to a garden. Seeds of joy, anger, peace, fear, all lie within. What you water will grow. Watching a violent movie may water seeds of aggression. Reading an inspiring story may water seeds of compassion. The choice is daily, moment by moment. Consumerism distracts us from this truth. It says, "There is no garden, you are only an endless appetite to be fed." But Buddhism restores dignity. You are a gardener. You choose what grows. To reclaim this truth is revolutionary. It breaks the cycle of craving and restores agency. Consider again the metaphor of food. A diet of only candy will destroy health, but a diet of wholesome grains, fruits, and vegetables builds resilience. Likewise, a mind fed only with entertainment, comparison, and fear will collapse. But a mind nourished with Dharma, silence, compassion will find balance. This is not to condemn all pleasures. The Buddha never taught ascetic hatred of joy. A sweet taste, a beautiful film, a playful distraction, these are not evil. The problem arises when they dominate, when we mistake them for nourishment, when they become the center of life. Junk becomes poison when it replaces what is wholesome. So how do we shift from junk mind to true nourishment? Begin small. Before reaching for your phone in the morning, breathe with the earth. Before filling silence with noise, listen to the birds. Before swallowing another dose of comparison online, offer yourself a moment of gratitude. Each choice waters a different seed. We must also practice contentment santuti. Contentment is not resignation, it is freedom from endless craving. When the mind rests in enough, consumerism loses its grip. The next purchase loses its power. The next distraction loses its pull. In contentment, the mind becomes clear, like water free from mud. And then joy arises, not the shallow joy of consumption, but the deep joy of presence. Eating a simple meal with mindfulness, one tastes more delight than in the most lavish feast eaten in distraction. Sitting in silence, one discovers a peace richer than any entertainment. Walking in nature, one feels connected, whole, alive. This is true nourishment. Therefore, let us reflect. What are we feeding our minds? Junk or Dharma? Poison or wisdom? The choice is not abstract. It is the path of suffering or the path of liberation. The Buddha said, "Whatever a monk frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of his mind." We are what we consume. And so, if we wish for peace, we must feed peace. If we wish for compassion, we must feed compassion. If we wish for freedom, we must feed freedom. The lotus does not bloom in polluted water, nor does wisdom bloom in a mind poisoned by junk. Clean the waters, nourish with care, and the lotus of awakening will rise. Pain arrives uninvited, a heaviness in the chest, a dull ache in the mind, a restless anxiety that will not loosen its grip. Our instinct is to silence it. This should not be here. Push it away, cover it up, fix it quickly. But Buddhism offers a different approach. Pain is not an enemy, nor a punishment. It is a signal, a message from the soul that something needs to be seen, healed, or changed. The Buddha taught that suffering, dukkha, is the first noble truth, not because he wished to depress us, but because he wished us to listen. Just as a doctor first acknowledges a symptom before prescribing a cure, the Buddha began with suffering. He taught, do not deny it, do not run from it. Look deeply into it, for hidden within pain is wisdom. Think of physical pain. When your hand touches fire, nerves scream. The pain is not there to torment. It is there to save you. It warns, pull back or you will be burned. In the same way, emotional pain signals imbalance. Loneliness says, reconnect. Exhaustion says, slow down. Depression says, something is out of alignment, find meaning. To silence pain without hearing its message is to remove the smoke alarm while the house burns. Yet in modern culture, we are trained to see pain as defect. We call it weakness, pathology, malfunction. We pop pills, chase distractions, numb ourselves with noise. But pain ignored grows louder. It becomes chronic, entrenched, demanding attention. Buddhism reminds us, listen early, listen gently. Pain does not come to destroy you, it comes to guide you. A story illustrates this. A young monk suffered from recurring sadness. He tried to meditate it away, to chant it away, to deny it. Finally, he approached his teacher and confessed, "Master, my sadness is proof that I am failing on the path." The teacher shook his head. "No, your sadness is proof that your heart is alive. Sit with it. Ask what it is teaching." The monk obeyed. In time, he realized his sadness was not random. It was grief for the suffering of others, grief that demanded he deepen his compassion. His pain was not weakness, it was awakening. This is the shift, from judgment to listening. Instead of saying, "Why am I broken?" we ask, "What is this pain trying to tell me?" Already the relationship changes. We are no longer enemies with our own experience. We become students of it. Thich Nhat Hanh often spoke of composting suffering. Just as a gardener transforms waste into fertile soil, we can transform pain into understanding. Anger, when listened to, reveals our deep longing for justice. Fear, when listened to, shows our need for safety. Depression, when listened to, unveils the hunger for meaning. Every symptom is a messenger. Of course, listening is not easy. Pain often arrives with intensity, demanding, overwhelming. But mindfulness offers a way. By breathing and naming, breathing in, I feel sadness. Breathing out, I hold sadness with care. We create space. In that space, the message emerges. Modern psychology mirrors this truth. Therapists speak of symptoms as signals: anxiety, depression, addiction. These are not random, but strategies the psyche adopts to survive imbalance. They carry information. When decoded, they point toward healing. What Buddhism intuited centuries ago, science now confirms. Symptoms are not meaningless, they are meaningful. But we must resist two extremes. One is denial, pretending pain does not exist. The other is identification, becoming the pain. Both are traps. The middle way is mindful listening, acknowledging pain as present, honoring it as signal, but not mistaking it for the whole self. This is sadness, not me. This is fear, not permanent. This is a message, not identity. So the next time pain arises, pause, place a hand on your heart, say gently, "Dear one, I hear you. What are you teaching me?" You may not receive an answer immediately. That is fine. Pain speaks slowly, in whispers, through dreams, through patterns. But the willingness to listen already begins the transformation. Buddhism teaches that Mara, the tempter, the lord of delusion, visited the Buddha even after his awakening. But instead of banishing Mara, the Buddha invited him to tea. He listened. In the same way, when pain knocks, do not slam the door. Invite it in, pour it tea, ask what it has come to reveal. For pain, once listened to, loses its sharpness. It softens into guidance. It becomes less of a wound and more of a teacher. And over time, we discover the radical truth. Our symptoms are not signs of weakness. They are signals of life, of sensitivity, of the soul's refusal to give up on us. The lotus does not bloom in clear water. It blooms in mud. This simple image, repeated again and again in Buddhist teachings, carries a profound truth. Without suffering, awakening cannot ripen. Compassion and wisdom do not arise in the absence of pain. They are born from it, shaped by it, strengthened through it. When we look back at our lives, what moments transformed us most deeply? Was it the days of ease, when everything went smoothly? Or was it the nights of struggle, when the heart broke, when failure humbled us, when grief forced us to look beyond ourselves? Again and again, it is suffering that becomes the doorway. The Buddha himself is proof. Sheltered in a palace of luxury, Siddhartha Gautama enjoyed pleasures beyond measure. Yet those pleasures did not awaken him. They lulled him into restlessness, dissatisfaction, a subtle hunger. It was only when he saw sickness, old age, and death, when he confronted suffering face to face, that the fire of awakening ignited. The path to enlightenment did not begin with comfort. It began with discomfort, with shock, with pain. Why is this so? Because suffering shatters illusion. We cling to the idea that life should always be smooth, that we can control outcomes, that permanence is possible. Pain reveals otherwise. Loss teaches impermanence. Illness teaches fragility. Disappointment teaches humility. These truths, once seen, strip away delusion, and in that stripping, wisdom grows. But wisdom is not the only fruit. Compassion, too, is born of suffering. The one who has never known loneliness cannot truly understand the lonely. The one who has never lost cannot fully sit with the grieving. Our wounds become bridges, connecting us to the wounds of others. This is why so many bodhisattvas are depicted not as perfect, unscarred beings, but as those who carry the marks of struggle. Their compassion is not abstract. It is embodied, lived, tested. There is a Zen saying, "No mud, no lotus." To reject suffering is to reject the very soil of awakening. Yet most of us do reject it. We curse our pain, we hide it, we ask, "Why me?" But Buddhism asks a different question. What is this suffering teaching me? Already the frame shifts. Suffering becomes not a punishment, but a curriculum. Consider heartbreak. At first, it feels like pure loss. But in time, it teaches the impermanence of attachment, the depth of love, the courage to open again, or consider failure. It bruises the ego, yet it also humbles arrogance, cultivates resilience, and reveals what truly matters. Or consider grief. It devastates, yet it also softens the heart, teaching the preciousness of each moment and each being. Every wound carries a seed of awakening. Modern psychology echoes this with the term post-traumatic growth. Researchers find that many who endure deep suffering emerge with greater empathy, deeper spirituality, and stronger meaning. This does not romanticize trauma. Pain is real, loss is devastating, but it shows that suffering, when met with awareness and support, can transform into wisdom. The Dharma has said this for millennia. Suffering, embraced mindfully, becomes the ground of liberation. Still, let us be honest. In the midst of suffering, this truth is hard to see. When the night is dark, talk of lotus flowers feels cruel. This is why the Buddha did not simply say, "Suffering leads to wisdom." He offered a path: mindfulness, compassion, community. With these, we can hold suffering long enough for it to reveal its lesson. Without them, pain may overwhelm and embitter. The difference lies in how we meet the mud. The practice, then, is not to seek suffering. Life provides enough of it, but to meet it with courage. To say, when pain arises, this too is part of the path. This too can teach me. In doing so, we stop wasting suffering. We compost it, turning waste into fertile soil. Thich Nhat Hanh described this beautifully. Suffering is not enough. Life is also filled with miracles. But if you run away from suffering, you also run away from the conditions of happiness. Learn to make good use of suffering. He meant that pain and joy are intertwined. The deeper we know suffering, the more deeply we appreciate peace. Without darkness, light would be unnoticed. Without winter, spring would not move us. This is why bodhisattvas vow to remain in the world of suffering. They understand the very place we wish to escape is the field where compassion ripens. To leave too soon would be to abandon the garden before it blooms. So they stay not because suffering is pleasant, but because suffering is fruitful. And so we too are invited to reframe our pain. Instead of seeing it as wasted years, we can see it as training. Instead of despising our wounds, we can honor them as teachers. Each scar is a sutra written on the body, each tear a mantra chanted by the heart. Does this mean suffering will vanish? No, but it means suffering will not be meaningless. And when suffering is no longer meaningless, it becomes bearable. More than bearable, it becomes transformative. Therefore, the question is not, how can I avoid all suffering? That is impossible. The real question is, how can I awaken through this suffering? The answer lies in mindfulness, in compassion, in remembering. This mud, too, nourishes the lotus. Without pain, wisdom cannot mature. Without struggle, compassion cannot deepen. Without the dark night, the dawn of awakening cannot shine. When the Buddha spoke of the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, he placed community, the Sangha, as essential to liberation. Why? Because no one heals alone. Just as a single hand cannot clap, a single being cannot awaken without the presence of others. Community is medicine, not a metaphorical medicine, but a real and vital cure for the sickness of isolation. Consider this truth in daily life. When grief comes, what eases the heart most? Is it advice shouted from a distance, or the silent presence of a friend who sits beside you? When depression darkens the mind, what lifts the weight? Self-criticism, or the gentle reminder from someone who says, "You are not alone"? Healing flows not from isolation, but from connection. The Buddha compared spiritual friends to lamps on a path. One lamp alone casts a small circle of light. Many lamps together brighten the whole road. In the same way, when we walk with others, sharing struggles, listening deeply, offering care, the journey becomes lighter. The suffering is not erased, but it is no longer carried alone. Modern research confirms this timeless wisdom. Studies show that people with strong social support recover more quickly from illness, live longer, and suffer less depression. Loneliness, by contrast, is as deadly as smoking or obesity. Community is not just comfort, it is survival. It is the air our souls breathe. But here is the paradox. Many long for community, yet fear receiving support. We believe, I must be strong, I must not burden others. So we withdraw, hiding pain behind masks. Yet in doing so, we deprive both ourselves and others. Forgiving and receiving are not separate, they are one. To receive support is to give others the chance to practice compassion. To ask for help is not weakness, it is generosity, offering someone the chance to love. The Sangha of the Buddha's time embodied this truth. Monks and nuns begged for food daily, not because they were helpless, but because this practice wove interdependence. The laity gave food, the monastics gave teachings. Each received, each gave. The circle of care sustained all. This is community as medicine, a mutual flow, not a one-way charity. Think of a forest. Each tree stands tall, yet beneath the soil, roots intertwine, sharing nutrients, water, even warning signals of danger. A single tree cannot thrive if the forest is sick. In the same way, each of us is rooted in community. Alone, we wither. Together, we flourish. The challenge is that modern culture glorifies independence. We are taught to solve problems privately, to wear masks of strength. But this is illusion. Even the strongest rely on countless unseen hands. Farmers, builders, teachers, healers. Interdependence is not weakness, it is reality. To deny it is to deny truth. So how do we practice community as medicine today? First, by showing up. Attend the circle, join the group, knock on a neighbor's door. Community does not appear by magic, it is built by presence. Second, by practicing deep listening. To listen without judgment, without rushing to fix, is itself medicine. Often, what a suffering person needs is not a solution but a witness. Third, by practicing humility, receiving help without shame. Remember, to accept care is to allow another to fulfill their vow of compassion. Buddhism teaches the practice of kalyana mitta, noble friendship. A noble friend is one who points us toward truth, who encourages us when we falter, who reflects our worth when we forget it. To have even one noble friend is priceless. To be such a friend is a great gift. Imagine a society where all practiced noble friendship, would loneliness not dissolve like mist in the sun. Yet community is not always easy. Where there are people, there are differences, conflicts, wounds. But even this is medicine. Just as the body strengthens by repairing small injuries, the heart strengthens by learning forgiveness, patience, and reconciliation. A perfect community does not exist. A real community, however, heals precisely through imperfection, through the constant practice of returning to love despite flaws. So let us reflect. Where is your community? Is it a temple, a meditation group, a circle of friends, a family dinner table? Wherever two or more gather with compassion, the Sangha is present. Do not wait for an ideal Sangha practice with the one you have. And if you cannot find one, begin with one other person. Light one lamp, and others will follow. Community is not a luxury. It is the raft across the river of suffering. Alone, the waters are too strong. Together, we row. Together, we sing. Together, we reach the farther shore. Therefore, the invitation is clear. Do not try to heal alone. Let others in, offer your presence, receive theirs. In this mutual exchange, medicine flows, medicine deeper than any pill, medicine written into the fabric of interbeing itself. The world often praises self-reliance as a virtue. From childhood, we are told, stand on your own feet, Don't depend on others. Solve your own problems. At first, this seems empowering, but when suffering strikes, this teaching turns cruel, because some wounds cannot be healed alone. Believing we must do so deepens despair. Buddhism teaches the principle of interbeing. Nothing exists by itself. A flower contains rain, soil, sunshine, the gardener's hands. Remove anyone, and the flower cannot bloom. Human beings are no different. We are made of countless others, parents, teachers, ancestors, the food we eat, the air we breathe. To say, I exist independently, is illusion. Yet this illusion shapes modern culture. When depression arises, people are told, fix yourself, think positive, try harder. But depression, by its nature, is the one problem no individual can solve alone. It is not simply an inner imbalance, it is disconnection, loss of meaning, a lack of belonging. The cure requires another's presence, a listening ear, a helping hand, a community of care. To place the burden only on the sufferer is like telling a drowning person, save yourself. The Buddha never taught radical self-reliance. After his awakening, he could have walked alone. Instead, he founded the Sangha, the community of practitioners. He knew that Dharma must be lived together. Even he, the enlightened one, valued companionship on the path. If the Buddha sought community, how can we imagine we do not need it? The illusion of self-reliance breeds shame. A person suffering in silence thinks, if I was stronger, I would not need help. I am weak for reaching out. So they withdraw further, cutting themselves off from the very medicine they need. Shame deepens suffering, and suffering deepens shame, a spiral that isolates the heart. But Buddhism reframes this. To seek support is not weakness, it is wisdom. It recognizes the truth of interbeing. Just as one candle lights another without losing flame, so does one heart brighten another. Healing is not subtraction, it is multiplication. Consider a story. A monk fell ill with fever, abandoned by others who feared contagion. The Buddha himself entered the hut, bathed the monk, and tended him. When the Sangha returned, ashamed, the Buddha said, "Whoever would care for me, let them care for the sick." He taught that caring and being cared for are both Dharma. To refuse to receive care is to block the flow of compassion. Modern psychology affirms this wisdom. Studies show that people who seek help recover faster from trauma and depression than those who isolate. Vulnerability, the courage to say, "I cannot do this alone," is a predictor of resilience. The illusion of self-reliance crumbles under research, just as the Dharma revealed centuries ago. Still, the conditioning runs deep. Many resist help, fearing burden. Yet Buddhism reminds us, giving and receiving are not separate. When you allow someone to help you, you give them the opportunity to practice compassion. You give them the joy of generosity. To accept care is itself an act of generosity. The forest illustrates this truth. Trees are not self-reliant. Beneath the soil, their roots exchange nutrients and water. Stronger trees support weaker ones. When one is ill, the forest shares resources to sustain it. If even trees know interbeing, should humans not learn the same? The practice, then, is to let go of the illusion of self-reliance. When pain arises, do not say, "I must hide it." Say, "I am part of the web of life. I will lean on others, and they will lean on me." To lean is not to collapse, it is to balance. A bridge does not stand by a single beam, but by many supports. So let us shift the narrative. Instead of praising self-reliance as ultimate strength, let us honor interdependence as true wisdom. Instead of asking, "Why can't I heal alone?" ask, Who is my Sangha? Where is my support? When we abandon the illusion of self-reliance, despair softens, because then we see, I am not meant to carry this alone. I was never meant to. Healing is not a solitary act, it is a collective song. The Buddha said, by relying upon one another, all things are done. May we remember this, especially in our darkest hours. In today's world, intolerance spreads like wildfire. Families fracture over politics. Strangers lash out on social media. Communities divide into echo chambers, each convinced the other is foolish or dangerous. At the heart of this fragmentation lies a forgotten skill, tolerance. Not mere indifference, but the capacity to hold difference without hatred. Buddhism teaches that this tolerance is not weakness, it is the very foundation of compassion. Without it, the heart narrows. With it, the heart becomes vast enough to embrace all beings. The Buddha warned against clinging to views ditthi upadana. He knew that when we grasp tightly to our opinions, we mistake them for truth. Like a man clutching a snake by the tail, we end up bitten. Tolerance arises when we release that grip, when we remember. Opinions are impermanent, perspectives are partial. No single person sees the whole. The Dharma itself is described as a raft, useful for crossing the river, but not to be carried forever. If even teachings are to be held lightly, how much more so our personal judgments? And yet, intolerance has become the habit of our age. Why? Because intolerance offers false comfort. It tells us, I am right, they are wrong. I belong, they do not. I am safe inside my group and threatened outside it. This binary soothes insecurity, but it deepens separation. Loneliness grows, anger multiplies, violence festers. The very medicine we need, connection, is poisoned by the intolerance we cling to. Consider the body. If the immune system overreacts, it begins to attack its own cells. This is called autoimmune disease. Intolerance functions the same way in society. By rejecting difference, we end up harming ourselves, weakening the larger body of humanity. The cure is not more attack, but balance, patience, tolerance. What does tolerance mean in the Buddhist sense? It is not passive acceptance of harm. It does not mean allowing injustice to flourish. Rather, tolerance means seeing the humanity even in those we disagree with. It means understanding that behind every harsh word or harmful act lies ignorance, fear, or pain. Instead of responding with hatred, we respond with curiosity. What suffering drives this view? What conditions shaped this action? Thich Nhat Hanh often told the story of a pirate who committed terrible acts at sea. His students asked, "How can we have compassion for such evil?" They replied, "If you had been born in his circumstances, raised in his suffering, taught his fears, you might have acted the same." Compassion does not excuse harm, but it seeks to understand its roots. This is tolerance, to hold even the most difficult beings in the light of interbeing. Tolerance must also be practiced in smaller ways in families, workplaces, friendships. A child challenges a parent's beliefs. A colleague holds an opposing opinion. A neighbor lives by a different culture. These differences need not be threats. They can be teachers. Each encounter with difference expands the heart, stretches our capacity for patience, reveals the vastness of the human experience. The Buddha's Sangha embodied this diversity. Kings and beggars, scholars and farmers, men and women, all sat together as disciples. They argued, disagreed, struggled. Yet the Buddha never demanded uniformity. Instead, he reminded them of their shared refuge in Dharma. Their unity was not in sameness, but in commitment to compassion. This is tolerance in action, unity without uniformity, belonging without erasure. Modern psychology supports this wisdom. Research shows that contact across differences reduces prejudice. When people share meals, projects, or stories with those unlike themselves, empathy grows. Tolerance is not an abstract idea. It is cultivated through lived connection. The very practice of sitting with difference is itself medicine. But tolerance requires humility. To be tolerant is to admit, I do not see the whole picture. My view is partial, conditioned, limited. This humility is rare in a culture of certainty, where to say, I don't know, feels like weakness. Yet in Buddhism, humility is strength. The wise bow not because they are inferior, but because they see clearly the vastness beyond themselves. So how do we relearn tolerance in our daily lives? Begin with the breath. When anger arises in conversation, pause, breathe deeply. Instead of reacting, listen. Ask, what is this person truly saying? What fear or need hides beneath their words? This small act of listening is radical. It interrupts the cycle of attack and defense. Second, practice perspective-taking. Imagine yourself in the other's place. What conditions shaped their belief? What experiences molded their worldview? This does not mean you agree. It means you understand. And understanding is the soil from which tolerance grows. Third, cultivate equanimity, upekkha. This is the capacity to remain steady in the face of difference, to see all beings with impartial goodwill. Equanimity does not flatten uniqueness. It embraces it without preference. Like the earth, which receives both rain and fire without judgment, the tolerant heart receives all beings without hatred. Finally, remember impermanence. The opinions you hold today, are they the same as those you held 10 years ago? Likely not. If your views can change, so can others. To cling tightly is foolish. To allow space for growth is wise. Tolerance is the trust that transformation is possible for yourself and for others. When we practice tolerance, compassion deepens. We no longer see enemies, only fellow travelers on the path, each carrying their own burdens of ignorance and pain. We no longer see difference as threat, but as opportunity to widen our embrace. And as compassion deepens, loneliness dissolves, for to tolerate is to connect, and to connect is to heal. In the end, tolerance is not optional. It is the foundation of peace. Without it, families fracture, societies crumble, wars ignite. With it, even great differences can coexist in harmony. The Buddha said, hatred is never appeased by hatred. Hatred is only appeased by love. Tolerance is that love in practice, the willingness to remain open even when we disagree, to hold space even when we are challenged. So let us ask ourselves, where in my life do I resist tolerance? Whom have I written off as unworthy of patience? What walls has my heart built? And then, gently, let us breathe those walls softer. Let us practice seeing even the difficult ones as human, as interbeing, as part of the great web of life. Relearning tolerance is relearning compassion. It is remembering that difference does not divide, it reveals the vastness of the human family. And only when we embrace that vastness can we walk the path of true awakening together. Human beings are always living by some set of values. Whether spoken or unspoken, they guide our choices, shape our days, and determine the flavor of our lives. Yet many of the values celebrated in modern culture are hollow. We chase wealth, status, image, comparison junk values that sparkle for a moment but leave us empty inside. To turn from these illusions toward true values is not merely moral advice, it is survival for the soul. The Buddha taught that craving for wealth and praise is like drinking salt water. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. Junk values operate the same way. A new car, a fashionable outfit, a flood of online likes brief satisfaction, then emptiness returns. So we chase again, caught in the cycle of tanha, endless thirst. This cycle does not nourish, it depletes. Consider social media. A person posts a picture and receives 100 hearts. For a moment, they feel alive, visible, worthy. But soon the glow fades. They need another post, another round of validation. This is not true connection, it is performance. The heart hungers for something deeper, something that cannot be measured in clicks or applause. Buddhism points us toward true values: compassion, mindfulness, generosity, wisdom, belonging. These do not glitter in shop windows, but they satisfy in ways wealth never can. Compassion fills the heart by connecting us to others. Mindfulness grounds us in the present, free from the grasping of future and past. Generosity frees us from greed, reminding us that joy multiplies when shared. Wisdom clears illusions, and belonging heals loneliness. These are the foods that truly nourish. But how do we turn from junk to true values in a world that constantly sells illusion? First, by seeing clearly. The Buddha called this samaditthi, right view, to look honestly at the outcomes of our choices. Does endless striving for status bring peace, or does it bring anxiety? Does comparison make us kinder or more bitter? Does buying endlessly fill the heart or empty it? When we see the results clearly, we loosen our grip. Second, by practicing gratitude. Gratitude reveals the richness already present. A simple meal, a safe home, a friend's smile, these are treasures greater than gold. When we notice them, the hunger for more fades. Gratitude shifts us from scarcity to abundance, from envy to appreciation. Third, by cultivating presence, true values live only in the present moment. Status is about the future, how others will see us. Appearance is about the past, how we must maintain an image. But compassion, connection, mindfulness, they exist only now. When we breathe, when we listen deeply, when we hold another's hand, we are already living true values. The Cambodian story of the cow illustrates this shift. The farmer's healing did not come from status or appearance. It came from meaningful work and community support. The cow gave him dignity, purpose, belonging. These are true values. Likewise, Lisa in the East London garden found healing not in possessions, but in soil, sunlight, and shared laughter. Status could not save her. Connection did. Modern psychology confirms what Buddhism has long taught. Studies show that people driven by intrinsic values, personal growth, relationships, community report greater well-being than those driven by extrinsic values like wealth, image, and fame. When we live aligned with meaning, joy arises naturally. Still, the pull of junk values is strong. Advertisers spend billions to convince us that happiness is for sale. Culture pressures us to prove worth through achievements. How do we resist? By remembering impermanence. Status fades, appearance changes, wealth dissolves at death. What endures is love given, compassion practiced, wisdom shared. No one on their deathbed says, "I wish I had gained more followers." They say, "I wish I had loved more deeply." So the practice is simple yet radical. Every day, choose one true value to embody. Offer a kind word. Sit in mindfulness for 5 breaths. Share a meal. Express gratitude. These acts may seem small, but they nourish the roots of happiness, and over time, they reorient the heart from junk to truth. Let us reflect. What values are shaping our lives today? Are we chasing images that exhaust us, or cultivating connections that restore us? Are we living for appearances or for meaning? Each choice waters a seed. Which seeds will we grow? The Buddha said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." In the same way, better than 1,000 hollow pursuits is one true value lived fully. Turn from illusion to essence. Turn from appearance to connection. Turn from junk to Dharma. True values do not dazzle the eyes, but they free the heart. And in the end, freedom is what we seek. The Buddha once asked his disciples, "When you light a lamp for another, do you lose your own light?" Of course not. In fact, the flame multiplies, bringing more brightness to the world. This is the essence of interbeing, the realization that our happiness and the happiness of others are inseparable. To live as if we can be joyful while others suffer is illusion. To awaken to interbeing is to see that true happiness is collective. Modern culture often teaches the opposite. We are told, secure your own success first, chase your own dreams. Happiness is a private possession. But look closely. When you achieve alone, does joy last? A promotion, a trophy, an expensive purchase, they may excite for a moment, but without someone to share them with, the glow fades quickly. A meal eaten alone tastes different than the same meal shared with friends. Even laughter feels incomplete without another to echo it. This is because joy is relational. We are woven into one another like threads in a tapestry. To pull one thread is to affect the whole. The Buddha's teaching of anatta, non-self, reminds us that we are not sealed off individuals. We are made of others, parents, ancestors, teachers, strangers. Every breath contains trees, every thought contains culture. To imagine my happiness apart from your happiness is as absurd as imagining a wave apart from the ocean. Thich Nhat Hanh coined the word interbeing to describe this truth. He would hold up a piece of paper and say, "In this paper you can see the sunshine, the rain, the soil, the logger, the teacher, the parent. Without them, the paper could not exist. In the same way, without others, you cannot exist." To awaken to interbeing is to realize, when others are hungry, your meal is incomplete. When others are oppressed, your freedom is fragile. When others suffer, your happiness cannot be whole. This awakening shifts how we live. Instead of asking, "What do I want?" we ask, "What nourishes us all?" Instead of chasing personal pleasure, we cultivate collective well-being. This is not sacrifice, it is wisdom. Because when others are well, the conditions for our own well-being improve. When the forest thrives, each tree is nourished. When society is just, each individual breathes easier. Consider the illusion of individual wealth. A person may own vast riches, but if their community is plagued by violence or despair, they cannot feel safe or joyful, or consider health. One may guard their own body carefully, but if others neglect public health, disease spreads. Interbeing is not ideology, it is reality. Our lives are bound together in visible and invisible ways. The Buddha emphasized this interdependence in the practice of compassion. He taught that loving kindness, metta, is not limited to oneself or to friends. It must expand to strangers, to enemies, to all beings without boundary. Why? Because to exclude is to fragment, and fragmentation breeds suffering. To include all is to live in harmony with reality. Modern science echoes this truth. Neuroscientists have found that acts of compassion activate the brain's pleasure centers more than acts of selfishness. Helping others literally makes us happier. Sociologists find that societies with stronger social bonds and less inequality report greater overall well-being. Happiness is not a private achievement but a shared ecosystem. So how do we awaken to interbeing in daily life? Begin with mindfulness. When you eat, pause and see the countless beings in your meal, the farmer, the sun, the rain. Gratitude naturally arises. When you breathe, notice the trees breathing with you. Already, loneliness softens. Already, you feel the vast net of connection. Second, practice generosity. Give not only material things, but also time, presence, listening. Each act of giving is a declaration. Your happiness is my happiness. And each act returns joy to the giver. As the Buddha said, "If beings knew the merit of giving as I know, they would not let a single meal pass without sharing." Third, practice deep listening. When someone suffers, resist the urge to fix or argue. Simply listen, fully, with compassion. This simple act dissolves walls. It reminds both listener and speaker, we intera. Their pain touches you, your presence touches them. Healing flows both ways. Finally, expand your circle of care. Do not limit compassion to those who resemble you. Include the stranger, the difficult person, even the enemy. This does not mean condoning harm, but recognizing that they too are woven into the web. To exclude them is to exclude part of yourself. The Bodhisattva's vow is to save all beings because all beings are part of one body. Awakening to interbeing also changes how we face global challenges. Climate crisis, poverty, war. These are not someone else's problems. They are our own, because the suffering of the world is inseparable from our own future. To awaken is to act with this awareness, to live as if others' happiness is our own because it is. This awakening is not abstract. You can taste it whenever you help another and feel joy arise. You can see it whenever you share sorrow and find the burden lighter. You can sense it whenever you realize, I cannot be well if we are not well. So let us ask, how do I live today as if I am a separate self chasing private happiness, or as if I am part of a vast net of interbeing where true joy is shared? Each breath, each act, each choice answers that question. The Buddha said, consider others as yourself, not as metaphor, but as reality. For in the deepest truth, there is no separate self, only interbeing. To awaken to this is to awaken to love, to compassion, to peace. We have walked through the valleys of suffering, studied the illusions of independence, unmasked junk values, and remembered the deep truth of interbeing. Now the question arises, where do we go from here? The Buddha never left his disciples in despair. He always pointed to a path forward. That path, as it was 2,600 years ago, remains the same today. See suffering as teacher, take refuge in community, and walk with compassion as the way. The first noble truth declares, there is suffering. Many misinterpret this as pessimism, but the Buddha was not a pessimist. He was a realist and a physician. Just as a doctor cannot treat an illness without diagnosis, so too the Buddha could not guide without first naming reality. But suffering is not merely something to endure, it is a teacher. Every wound whispers a lesson. Loneliness teaches us the illusion of separateness. Anxiety teaches us the need for grounding. Depression teaches us that a life without meaning cannot be sustained. Grief teaches us the depth of love. Instead of running from these teachers, Buddhism invites us to sit at their feet, to bow to them, not in defeat, but in humility. For only by listening can we transform. Imagine a classroom where the lessons are difficult mathematics that strains the mind, languages that twist the tongue. If we avoid them, we remain ignorant. If we engage them, we grow. Suffering is such a classroom. The assignments are heavy, but they shape the soul into wisdom. This does not mean glorifying pain. The Buddha did not ask us to seek suffering, but to use it when it comes. The mud is not desirable, but without it, no lotus blooms. Our task is not to curse the mud, but to recognize its role in flowering. When we embrace suffering as teacher, we stop wasting it. We compost it into wisdom, into compassion, into awakening. The Buddha offered not only teachings, but also a place to practice them, the Sangha. He knew no one could walk the path alone. Community is not a luxury, it is a refuge. A refuge does not mean perfection. Sangha members quarrel, disappoint, stumble. But even with flaws, community sustains. A lone stick snaps easily, a bundle of sticks is strong. In the same way, when one person is weak, the Sangha holds them. When one falters, others steady them. In modern times, community has been eroded. Families live apart, neighbors are strangers, digital connections replace embodied presence, yet the hunger for belonging has not diminished. Depression and loneliness spread not because people are weak, but because the tribe has been disbanded. To rebuild community is therefore not optional, it is urgent medicine. What might this look like today? Perhaps a meditation circle where people breathe together weekly, perhaps a group garden where hands meet soil and laughter, perhaps simply meals shared without screens, where stories weave hearts together. Community need not be grand, it need only be intentional. And community must be reciprocal. To give support is vital. To receive support is equally vital. Many resist receiving, fearing to be burdens. But as the Buddha taught, to receive care is to allow others to practice compassion. The forest thrives because trees share resources unseen. Humans must do the same. When we take refuge in community, healing accelerates. Suffering is no longer private shame but shared human condition. Loneliness softens, meaning grows, resilience strengthens. The Sangha is both raft and shore, helping us cross suffering and reminding us we never cross alone. If suffering is the teacher and community the refuge, then compassion is the way we walk forward. Without compassion, wisdom turns cold, community turns tribal, practice turns rigid. Compassion warms everything, binding the path with love. Compassion begins with the self. To say, "I am enough," is not arrogance but soil from which generosity grows. A heart brutalized by self-hatred cannot sustain long-term care for others. When we cradle our own wounds with kindness, we create the conditions to cradle others. From there, compassion expands outward, to friends, to strangers, to those who oppose us. This expansion is not sentimental, it is practical. For as we learned, interbeing means no one suffers alone. To ignore the suffering of others is to plant seeds of our own future pain. To heal others is to heal ourselves. Compassion is not always comfortable. Sometimes it means listening to those we disagree with. Sometimes it means forgiving when the ego prefers to condemn. Sometimes it means acting with courage, standing for justice, offering presence in places of despair. But in every case, compassion enlarges the heart. It breaks the prison of self-absorption and connects us to the vast web of life. The Buddha's disciples once asked, "Master, what is the essence of your teaching?" He replied, "Do good, avoid harm, purify the mind. At the core of each is compassion. Do good compassion in action. Avoid harm compassion in restraint. Purify the mind compassion toward the self to free it from delusion. Compassion is not a single practice, but the path itself. Suffering, community, compassion. These three are not separate. They form a circle. Suffering awakens us to the need for compassion. Compassion draws us toward others. Community embodies that compassion and helps us face suffering. Around and around, each strengthens the other. When we forget this circle, we collapse. We treat suffering as curse, community as optional, compassion as luxury. But when we remember, the circle restores us. Suffering becomes teacher, community becomes medicine, compassion becomes way. This is the path forward, not a utopian dream of no suffering, but a realistic path through suffering into awakening. The Buddha did not promise the end of all pain. He promised liberation in the midst of pain. Liberation, not from life, but from illusion. So how do we live this path in daily life? Begin each morning with awareness. Whatever suffering comes today, may I learn from it. This reframes pain before it arises. Seek out community, attend, join, create. Even two people sitting in mindfulness is Sangha. Feed the circle, for it will feed you. And practice compassion relentlessly. Small acts matter. A smile, a kind word, an hour of listening, these ripple outward beyond measure. The world is starving for compassion. Each act is medicine, not only for others, but for your own heart. The Buddha once said, "You yourself must strive. The Buddhas only point the way." The way has been pointed, suffering as teacher, community as refuge, compassion as the way. The invitation is open. Will we walk it? The path is not far. It begins with the next breath, the next act of kindness, the next step toward connection. Slowly, step by step, the circle of awakening expands within us, among us, around us. This is the path forward. We have journeyed together through suffering and healing, illusion and awakening, despair and hope. The road has been long, but it has carried us deeper into the heart of Buddhist wisdom. And now, as we stand at the close, it is time to weave these lessons into a single fabric, a cloak of insight and compassion we can carry forward into daily life. At the beginning, we acknowledged what many fear to face. Suffering is real. Loneliness, depression, anxiety, emptiness. These are not personal defects, but human experiences. The Buddha did not deny them. He placed them at the center of his teaching. There is suffering, he declared, not to discourage us, but to awaken us. Just as a doctor names an illness before treating it, the Buddha named suffering so that we might learn to understand it. And what have we learned? That suffering is not punishment, it is teacher. Every pain carries a message. Loneliness whispers, reconnect. Anxiety warns, slow down and ground yourself. Depression cries, you cannot continue without meaning. To silence these signals is to miss their wisdom. To listen is to begin transformation. Pain, embraced mindfully, becomes not curse but curriculum. We also saw that emotions are impermanent. Sadness, fear, anger, they rise like clouds and pass like clouds. They are not the sky itself, only weather. Our true nature is vast awareness, steady beneath all storms. This truth frees us. We are not our emotions. We are the sky that holds them. Depression, then, is not mere malfunction. It is signal, protest, imbalance revealed. It tells us something in life must change. And change is possible because suffering arises through conditions. Just as a seed needs soil, water, and light, suffering needs certain causes to appear. Remove or transform those causes, and suffering diminishes. This is dependent origination. Nothing arises alone, and nothing persists forever. From this, we understood the illusions of our age, the worship of independence, the chase for junk values, the addiction to echo chambers all feed suffering. Humans are tribal beings, born to interconnect. To disband the tribe is to wound the spirit. To chase status is to starve the soul. To live in echo chambers is to shrink the heart. These are not just social habits, they are spiritual diseases. And yet, we also saw the antidotes. The Cambodian farmer healed not through pills alone, but through community, a cow gifted by neighbors, restoring purpose and belonging. The East London garden healed not through isolation, but through soil, sunlight, and shared laughter. These stories remind us, healing is not found only in medicine bottles. It is found in connection, in purpose, in compassion lived concretely. Again and again, the message returned. Community is medicine. No one heals alone. The Buddha himself created the Sangha because he knew awakening requires companionship. Even the enlightened one did not walk in isolation, and community heals not only by giving, but by receiving. To accept care is not weakness, it is generosity, allowing others to practice compassion. Compassion, then, is the path itself. Without compassion, wisdom grows cold. Without compassion, community collapses. Without compassion, practice hardens into rigidity. Compassion warms everything. It begins with the self-learning to say, I am enough. From that soil, it expands outward, to family, to strangers, even to enemies. This expansion is not sentimental but practical, for in interbeing, others' happiness is our own. To heal them is to heal ourselves. Interbeing, this is the great revelation. The myth of the separate self dissolves. We see that happiness is not private property. If others are hungry, our meal is incomplete. If others are oppressed, our freedom is fragile. If others suffer, our joy is unstable. To awaken is to live as if our well-being and the well-being of others are inseparable because they are. This is why tolerance matters. To embrace difference is not optional, it is the foundation of compassion. Without tolerance, we fracture into tribes of hatred, poisoning the very soil we share. With tolerance, we create space for diversity, for humanity, for growth. As the Buddha said, hatred is never appeased by hatred, it is only appeased by love. Tolerance is that love in practice. And so, the path forward emerges clearly. Suffering as teacher, community as refuge, compassion as way, interbeing as reality. These are not abstract ideals but daily practices. To listen to pain instead of fleeing, to build tribe instead of isolating, to practice compassion even when it is inconvenient, to feed the mind with wholesome nourishment instead of junk, to water seeds of meaning instead of chasing appearances. These small acts, repeated daily, become the great path of awakening. Let us remember, awakening does not mean a life without pain. Even the Buddha felt illness, loss, and the sorrows of impermanence. Awakening means that pain no longer imprisons us. We see it as impermanent, as teacher, as part of the web of life. We walk with it, learn from it, transform it. Liberation is not escape from life, but deep embrace of life in its fullness. And so, dear one, as you rise from these words, the invitation is simple. Do not wait for the perfect conditions. Do not wait for suffering to vanish. Begin here, now, with the next breath. Say gently to yourself, I am enough. Reach out to another. You are not alone. Breathe with the earth. We are. These are the seeds of awakening, the steps of the path. The world is aching, but it is also waiting. Waiting for us to remember that healing is not solitary, that happiness is not selfish, that compassion is not optional. The world waits for us to embody the truth the Buddha revealed, that we are already connected, already capable, already on the path. So may we walk it together. May we honor suffering as teacher. May we take refuge in community. May we practice compassion as way. And may we remember in every breath, your happiness is my happiness is your happiness. We are. This is the conclusion. This is also the beginning.